Cool. You been able to do a sound check?
Yeah, I have Sammy look it up because apparently I can't rely on Walt for this stuff, man. Jesus. Oh, there you go. They hear us now. It's all right. They can hear me talking shit about Walt here because I told him to take sound the other time and I sounded horrible. And in chat he's like, "Oh, you sound good, buddy." Really? I do? I think his ears are broken. All right, so let's get started here. All right, so let's All right, let me see what we got here. All right, so let's get the talk rolling. Let's see if I can hear you guys.
Oh, okay. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah.
Blah blah blah.
Blah 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 blah.
Ooh, you're not hearing anything, are you?
Oh yeah, no, we're hearing it. We're hearing it. I
Oh,
heard it
okay,
from
okay.
Sammy's phone. Do they sound clear
Oh,
at least? They sound good?
I hope I sound good.
Just trying to hear Gene right now.
Bro, I'll try to talk as much as I can, but I'm not sure what to talk about.
that should be enough.
That should be I'll just raise you up a little bit, Gene.
Okay.
But in case in point, you don't hear echoes? Okay, we're good. All right, we're fine.
Cool. All right. So we're good?
I think so, yeah. I think we're good. Yep. Go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the DualShock and Sense podcast, episode 113, right? I think so.
Happy Halloween, sort of.
We'll see. We'll see. But yes, I am joined as always by Macho. How you doing, man?
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. A bit of a late night one, right? But I think
This
we're ready to
intro's
get.
weird. This intro's already
Yeah, a
weird.
little bit. But you know, I'm stuffed on fried chicken right now, and yeah, I'm ready to head to bed. To be honest with you, but I'm good,
Oh,
man.
man. But yeah, we should also kind of provide context that we haven't really discussed if this is gonna be like a new time for us, but obviously for this specific podcast, yeah, we're deciding to record a little bit later. It might have to be as in my current work schedule is that I work like Saturday afternoon. So yeah, we'll see. We'll play it by ear, I guess. But yeah, so that explains the time change for this podcast. But yeah, Macho, do your proper intro, man. Who are you? You didn't even say that part.
I'm sorry.
Come on,
I'm
man.
sorry. It's been a while, man. We do these things bi-weekly. You kind of just forget the habits. You know what I mean? What's up, everybody? It's the King of Kingdom Hearts and the Final Fantasy fanatic.
There you
It's
go.
it's Macho here. I'm your Boricua Macho. What's going on, everybody? You catch me live on Twitch every Monday and Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Boricua Macho channel on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. So hit me up there. We're gonna be streaming Yakuza 0 on Monday, so don't miss out.
Is your first time playing it?
Sort of. Yeah, sort of. I would say I played it before, but I kind of trailed off of it because I wasn't ready for that kind of game. But now we're gonna dive full on into it, and it's gonna be my first time after like the first Majima chapter. So
Nice.
I'm ready to get to start it. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So join in.
It's a good game. It's a long one, but it's a good game. Really good game. We also got a guest, special guest, which I don't think he's been here since before the showcase. I want to say it's definitely been a while. But we got Gene here. How you doing, man?
Yeah, pretty good, guys. Thanks for having me back. I love talking to you guys. You guys are two of my favorite people to talk about video games with.
Oh,
So I'm glad to be
thank you. Appreciate
it. We got some pretty big things happened recently in the realm of PlayStation, so we're gonna obviously talk about all that good stuff. Before we do, we are going to talk about the games that we have been playing recently. Gene, why don't you kick things off, man? What have you been up to game wise?
Baldur's Gate 3, I'm trying to wrap up. Just trying to get through as much stuff as I can for Game of the Year voting, which will be over the
Where
next
are you at with Baldur's Gate, story wise?
halfway through Act 2, near the end of Act 2.
Okay, cool.
Um,
And I'm assuming you're liking it.
yeah, oh yeah, I love it. Yeah. Yeah, right now, if voting was today, it'd be my Game of the Year.
Awesome.
I finished Spider-Man,
What?
and Spider-Man was like, um, it's everything that I thought it would be, right? And I was really happy with how everything played out. I just think that the game is lost on time. The teams struggle with the pandemic and the work from home and these transitions we're making in our lives, like, and the complications that are going on everywhere in the world. They struggle differently, and I just noticed like little things, right? Like God of War got delayed a couple times, and I felt like that physical copy was kind of weird. Like the paper felt weird, the plastic felt weird, and like weird odd things happen where you can tell these people are just like scrambling the last minute to get done. And with Spider-Man, it just felt like they did everything they could in the amount of time that they had. But boy, if they had more time, they could flush out the side quest stuff, because the side, I don't want to ruin anything for anybody.
Yeah.
The side quest stuff is boring and lame. And then at the very end, there's this huge side story payoff at the end of each side quest, or at the end of each collectible. In the first game, you had like dynamic interactions with Black Cat. You had interactions with the Taskmaster, who I love. He's one of my favorite villains in all the Marvel universe. And the side story stuff is just really lacking. Although, I mean, it's an incredible game. Like, it's one of my favorite video games of all time. But I can't. And it's like my personal game of the year. Uh, from an actual real logistical, like, what is game of the year, what deserves it, it's like Baldur's Gate is the exact opposite in every way. Like, every crumb, every rat you can talk to, every character you encounter is meaningful, and there's dialogue there, and there's so many branching paths, and all of our experiences are going to be completely different. And that's not, I don't think that's the way video games are going, because it's just too big. But where Spider-Man is right now, it needs to go somewhere more advanced than just more of the same in a typical action adventure storyline in an open world.
No, I think I haven't played it. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I definitely do think, and you're kind of seeing this same. Me and Macho talk about this all the time about, because we saw the exact thing happen with Horizon Forbidden West. The same conversations happened with God of War Ragnarok. This idea of these games, oh, they're just quote unquote DLC, or they're just the same from their predecessors. And I feel like with Spider-Man 2, um, it's probably the last time that it can get away with it, even though I personally don't have an issue with these games being quote unquote the same as I mean, these are
Mm.
sequels. Like, how different can they truly be? So I don't really mind that, but I do think that once we get to Spider-Man 3, it does feel like we need to have, which I don't know what that looks like, but it does feel like for that game there needs to be some significant changes, whether that's a different location altogether or what have you. It does feel like Spider-Man 3 is the one that needs to change it up a bit.
Yeah, I would actually hate to see them change the location. When you came on, Macho and I were talking about Yakuza and how, for 6 games they use the same city and were just reiterating on it over and over and over again, and just every little detail, every room, adding these mini games, adding these characters, adding this dialogue. That's where they have to grow, is how meaningful everything is in the city. They don't have to, I mean, they can obviously continue to expand into Brooklyn, into Queens, maybe even, I hate to say this is so stupid, but like maybe even north of Manhattan into Westchester County. But they really need to kind of put it under a magnifying glass and really expand that way, as opposed to like, oh, let's go send Spider-Man to Europe now, and here's the London we created. Let's go send Spider-Man to San Francisco, and here's that. And I overall
I think
disagree
that's
with
more
what.
exciting than like Westchester County or something like
You're
that.
no, you're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. I was kind of joking about the Westchester County
I
thing.
was,
It's
saying,
like
I was like, the most he's gonna run up in there is bad bagels. That's all he's gonna get up there.
Right. It's like the scene from The Lion King. It's like everything north of like Central Park to me is like Westchester County. Simba above this line. That's Westchester County. No, but and I just want to see them. I love the Manhattan they built. I think it's phenomenal. But I want to see them go deeper. And I don't have a problem with how long it was. I don't share the sentiments that a lot of the Twitter fanboys do about these games being DLC, especially Horizon. Oh my God, especially Horizon is not. That is like not in the realm of DLC at all.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I think that Elden Ring, especially, and maybe Baldur's Gate, and maybe some of the feedback they're getting on Spider-Man has them really seriously thinking about what they're going to do with Ghost of Tsushima 2. And is that going to be like we saw with Spider-Man and Horizon, where it's just like more of the same? Or is it going to be like, is it going to be a little different? And I think they missed the plot with the criticisms and the comparisons to Elden Ring on Horizon. The game it didn't sell as well. It wasn't as highly regarded for whatever reason. I think it's a much better looking game than Elden Ring. I think it has much better mechanics than Elden Ring, especially traversal. It's a greater level of detail, more meaningful characters, but like they're missing something, and they know that, right? And it's the hand holding, but they miss in the mark on that. They don't realize it's the hand holding. They think it's the difficulty level, and it's not really so much the difficulty level because you can just turn the difficulty level on and up dynamically with that game, and you really feel it. But when the DLC came out, you can tell they were responding to the Elden Ring criticism because that DLC was just like unnecessarily difficult
It was
with like
really tough.
really powerful enemies, and it really should have just been uh more Horizon. But like the next game, like let's get rid of all the yellow ropes everywhere that are showing you exactly where you have to go, and like maybe get rid of all the nav points. And like I think I played that game without the UI on at all. Like I played that game in Zelda,
Yeah,
total UI.
I'll tell Macho Wall all the time that when I play Horizon, I turn the little compass or mini map or whatever they have, I turn that stuff off, and I just like it's so much more immersive just like walking around with absolutely no HUD. Like I that's why I love that game so much, just being able to do that.
I was doing the same thing with Spider-Man. I turned all the UI off, and then I'm like, how do they expect me to find all these spider bots? And then I realize you get the power to see the spider bots on the mini map
Mhm.
later in the game, and it's just like, oh my god, now I can find all these little spider bots everywhere. But yeah, no, I thought it was amazing and thought it was incredible. It did a great job. The visuals are unbelievable, and the reason why it's not a 10 out of 10 and why I think it's a 9 out of 10, and I'm in total agreement with the Metacritic score, is that like they can go deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you
Uh,
there, Gene, because I finished it the past weekend too. I finished actually the weekend it came out, and that wasn't even intentional. I really wanted to sort of stretch it out a little bit throughout the week, have something to look forward to when I get off of work and stuff like that. But when I just sat down and played it Saturday, Sammy was right next to me, and we both just got sucked into the story. And then once Venom got introduced, we were just all in, and we stood up until like 11 o'clock at night playing, just watching it, and she was watching and I was just playing the story. And then the next morning I did all the side content, got super overpowered, and then we finished the story. We're like, damn, that was a really good story. And Sonic like knocked out of the park. In Venom is how great is Venom, man? Like
That
perfection.
so when Venom I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, but when Venom first appears in that game, that is my favorite moment of gaming from this year.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100. I know exactly what you mean, because when that stuff happened, I just put my controller down and Sam was like, "You're going ape shit." And I was like, "Absolutely. This is amazing what they're doing. Like they're fulfilling all the fantasies that comes to like a Spider-Man fan for me." Like I grew up playing Spider-Man 1 where Venom was super, like he was like the kind of like the comic book like the comic book character that's super funny and comedic, like it's almost Deadpool like, but kind of more dumb.
Mhm.
Um, like it was just more make fun of Spider-Man. He was just kind of like a big dumb bully in like the old games. But in this one, he's a freaking monster, man, and it just
Yeah.
fits the theme. It's so cool.
Yep.
So cool what they do.
Yep. Mhm.
Nice. Yeah, I'm really excited to get into it eventually.
It's awesome,
Um,
man. I will agree with Gene too on at least like as far as it comes to the depth of the side quests. I wouldn't for me. I didn't think the side quests were necessarily boring or bad or you know time wasters. For me, it was all about the story, and there are definitely moments in the side quests where, yeah, like leading up to it was like not as engaging combat or engaging gameplay, but the payoff, yeah, was absolutely huge. And like, there's certain moments in this game that are like some of my favorite Spider-Man moments I've ever seen, movie or game, and they fulfill for both Peter and Miles. It's just so well done. Different, like again, the storylines are I think it's like top notch, and that's why I commend Insomniac the most here. Is not really the innovation of the side quest, but more of just the storytelling aspect. How
Mhm.
I was looking for more an improvement over what one did, and they just blew out of the park for me. From like, what is Spider-Man? Like, what is the essence of Spider-Man? What's the Spider-Man story? Why people love him? And they did that for every part of Spider-Man 2. Which so that's why I was really more content with the fact that side quests were less engaging, so to speak.
nice. Yeah, yeah, very excited to get into it, and I'm curious to see like what are the how do you even in terms of like improvements, because it does feel like from Spider-Man 1 to Spider-Man 2 is like this is like honestly both of these games are like the pinnacle of like what you can do with a Spider-Man game. So like how do you possibly take it further? And like I know you guys were throwing out ideas of like making a more dense New York, having it possibly be more interactive, more explorable, possibly like on the ground level. They could definitely do things like that, but yeah, I mean like how for their next entry, how do you possibly like take it even further, when again, like according to Metacritic, this is like one of the best games of the year. So it's like, that saying of like it only goes up from here, but it's like we're already up, technically. So like yeah, I'm just really curious to see like what does the team have in store for a third game? Like where do you improve?
Yeah, just it's tough because what people seem to be having like the biggest criticism is the side stories for these characters, when the biggest factor about these characters are the characters themselves. So in my mind, what they will be thinking as an evolution for Spider-Man 3 will be, well, you're gonna play as more characters.
Mm,
And Brian Tar mentioned in an interview that, well, if Spider-Man 2 is our Civil War and Spider-Man and Miles were our Iron Man, well, the next step has to be Endgame. So that in my mind, that's like, oh, okay, more characters to play as in this world, in their New York. That's their
gotcha.
answer to how they're going to step it up. But we'll see.
Yeah, we shall see. Um, so Gene, has that been all for you in terms of what you've been playing?
Yeah, Mario, Baldur's Gate, and Spider-Man the past couple of weeks. I definitely really want to get Alan Wake, RoboCop, and I feel like something else came out recently too. But
Ghost Runner.
Ghost Runner 2, yeah, got that physical ordered. Whenever it shows up, I'll play it. Yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah. Hell
I
yeah.
think I'm gonna get Alan Wake and RoboCop.
Nice. Yeah, I'm about to talk about Alan Wake too, so um but yeah, okay. So Macho, do you want to go next or you want me
Yeah,
to go first next? Okay, cool.
yeah. I want to go more into the Alan Wake too because I want to actually hear what you had to say about that one. But so, mine was Spider Man and playing through on stream actually on the Boricua Macho channel, twitch.tv/Boricua Macho. Resident Evil 4,
Oh, finally.
the remake. Yeah, finally, the game I bought day one, even the deluxe edition. Finally started playing it for the Halloween holiday, and this game is awesome, dude. The pacing is incredible. I have to say, like, from someone that played the original and wasn't really jiving with it, I liked it, but like I was also very frustrated with it because of the tank controls. And in this one, it's just yeah, it's what you imagine Resident Evil 4 played like when people talked about the original, but better. It's just so good. and the graphics are awesome. The shooting feels great. I'm getting my ass kicked so much in this soul. This game is actually pretty hard. I'm playing on normal.
Yeah.
Like for not one shot, but like zombies that basically kill you in one hit or just pull off Leon's head. Everything looks super graphic and crazy. I keep getting stuck in damn bear traps all the time. I
Yep.
actually have this pretty awesome stream moment where I was leading out a guy with the guy with the chainsaw on the back over his head. Harley, can you stop doing this, please? Thank you. I was leading him out, and then I was gonna actually parry his chainsaw with my knife, and then start shooting him. Lo and behold, man, I back up, didn't see he was on the ground. I stepped into a freaking bear trap, and then this dude winded up and absolutely impaled Leon and just blew his bits apart with his chainsaw. And it was probably one of the most embarrassing moments on stream, but also one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just the absolute macho blunders that come on the Twitch channel have just been so much fun. But yeah, this game is great, dude. I love it a lot, and I can see why people would count it as like a Game of the Year nominee. Like it's absolutely up there.
Yeah.
I have to
Are
say,
you thinking about picking up the DLC as well?
yeah, I already have it. So
Oh, cool.
I'm gonna go straight to that right after I beat the main campaign, and I'm a little like kind of not excited about it because Ada Wong's voice actress is not that great, and I don't want to be. I'm not gonna be mean about it. Say like, oh, she's freaking horrible. Like, but she just sounds dry.
Mm.
Am I alone in that one or?
I mean, I don't really. Resident Evil 2 remake was a long time ago. Resident Evil 4 on the Wii was an even longer time ago. I don't remember how she's like quote unquote supposed to sound like. And also my mind is also a little bit warped because Ada Wong was in Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City at the end. So I have that voice in my head as well. So I feel like I have several different versions of Ada. So like I don't know. I felt like she was like not too like her screen time in RE4 is not long enough for me to really be that like feel too critical about her, right? Like for me it's like she's gone before I even really like feel the need to like have like any like enough material to really complain about, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think then coming off the perspective of Ada Wong, like I remember from Resident Evil 6, 4 when I played the original and stuff like that, and then 2, it's just like every time Ada's like kind of like that character where every time you see her, you expect something a little more interesting and fun out of her, and she still is that, but it was a line delivery and just her confidence that really made it. In Resident Evil 4, she has that confidence, but the voice just doesn't really match her. Like the action doesn't really, or the just like the gravitas of her voice just doesn't really like fit the bill. So it's a little like off-putting when she's trying to be like half flirtatious, but also like a little dangerous, and then she's just sounding like a dry paper wall or something. I don't know. It's weird. It's off-putting for me as someone that played Resident Evil 6 and where she was like a pivotal character in that game and she stole scenes. And now it's not
Yeah.
she's not really like a scene stealer. She feels like she's just there. So yeah, Resident Evil 4 was there. One more Final Fantasy 14 as well. I actually dived into the Fall Guys collaboration that they had. I streamed that as well on Twitch, and that was a lot of fun. People are finally learning that Final Fantasy 14's one is not a damn platform game, and two is not a good game for online platforming. So super frustrating, but a lot of fun. Regardless, I think the collaboration is super cool. And lastly, what I've been playing, fellas, is currently in my top 3, if not top 2, game of the year contenders. Liza P.
Mm.
This is Bloodborne 2. This is the game that we've been waiting for. This is the game I wanted from Elden Ring. Absolutely everything. This game is just incredible from top to bottom. The discovery, the music is just so amazing, bringing me to tears, man. The music is bringing me to tears, and there are times where it's just so epic. And Soul, there's a boss last night. I don't know if you heard of Laxia the Complete.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you're about to kiss her feet once you see her. I'll tell you that right now. In every way you can imagine. I saw her, and I was like, "Yo, that's a girl for soul." Right from from the eyeliner to just her physique to the way she's just gripping those swords and swinging them around. She's doing all the things that you love, buddy. I can tell you're gonna fall in love with this one. No, it's just a lot of fun. And I'm on the last boss of this game that's giving me quite a problem. So I think I have to go back and respec my character. But yeah, I mean, this game is just from top to bottom amazing. And after this podcast, I'm gonna go in and see if I can beat the game and get the ending and stuff like that. But yeah, so far it's incredible, and I highly recommend it for everybody. It gets pretty hard at the last couple bosses, but overall we're making it through it, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, it's up there for me, especially for this year.
Hell yeah. I guess. Well, okay. We'll have this conversation about game of the year after I list off what I've been playing. What we think are the updated nominees for Jeff Keighley's Game of the Year awards. Because yeah, it just feels like every week we have like a new entry. So I'm curious to see after our last podcast if anything's really changed for us, and then what Gene thinks is gonna get the 6 games that are gonna get nominated. Okay, so yeah, for me, still more Baldur's Gate 3. I think it was last podcast or maybe the podcast before that I was telling the group that I was starting to feel a bit overwhelmed because Gene, I'm in Act 3 right now. I don't it's hard to know if I'm close to the end. I don't think so, but like I'm pretty deep into Act 3 at this point. Done a ton of side quests. Finished off a couple companion quests, like their storylines. So kind of nearing the end for sure. But yeah, so I got to a point when I first entered Act 3 where I was feeling choice paralysis that I didn't have with Act 1 and 2 because it's like you're entering the city proper and it's just like there's so many new people to meet, so many buildings to enter, and all of those buildings have characters to talk to and that branch off into their own quests and things like that. And of course there's, the companion quests and random events that pop off and whatnot. It's very overwhelming when you get there, and it honestly kept me away from the game in terms of like playing time for a while. But now I'm starting to kind of get back in the groove of things, kind of just handle things one at a time, commit to like certain quest lines, complete that, see that all the way through to the end, and then move on to something else. That kind of like process has definitely helped for sure. So yeah, just still chipping away at BG3. I finished Astarion and Shadow Hearts quest lines completely this past week. Two quest lines that were like really emotional, like had me tearing up. Like they're so good, so good. So yeah, just still continuing to just really adore every moment of this game. I'm like 138 hours into it or something like that, and I'm just eating up every bit of it. So yeah, still my game of the year, obviously. But yeah, that's BG3. The other game that I kind of been bouncing back and forth between has been Alan Wake 2. I wasn't planning to get this day one, but just something about the reviews and the way that people were talking about this game, and then like I don't know if you guys had this same like realization too, but then like at some point when on the release date, I was like, oh yeah, I really liked Control. Why aren't I getting this game day one? Like I absolutely should get it day one. So yeah, I've been playing a lot of Alan Wake 2, about 9 hours into it. Which may be a little bit skewed because that first boss, to anyone who's played it, Nightingale, he effed me up, man. Like I was on that boss for a while. Um but
Damn.
but yeah, the game is it it's really damn good. And Macho, you know me that I'm not horror and me have a complicated relationship. Like I could get through things like a Resident Evil and some other horror games. I would even say some like Demon Souls and some of the Souls games have like some horror elements, definitely some spooky elements for me. Bloodborne especially. And this game is definitely like one of the like it's scary just in the terms of like the sheer like atmosphere and the noises that you're hearing and what the game does with music. And then it's always so funny because like the music will ramp up, making you think that something is gonna happen, but then usually nothing ever does happen, right? So it's just like it's so good about like having you like on the edge of your seat and being really nervous to like look around the corner, and then you eventually do start walking down that hallway, that creepy hallway or whatever, and then there's nothing on the other side of it, you know? It's like, okay, everything's okay, you know? But it's just like it's so cool how just like how powerful music and noises in this game can be, because like it's really good about that, for sure. Um, but yeah, I really don't know what else I can say about this game. Just in aside from just like I feel like this game has been sort of like the magnum opus of Remedy in the sense of like their style. Like we kind of have known for a while now that Remedy definitely has like this particular, they've carved out this niche of like you don't even need to see like the developer name on the screen, and you maybe a couple hours into it you can tell that it's a Remedy game. And I don't know, man. I feel like Alan Wake 2 has really just been like the culmination of what they've learned from Control, what they've learned from Quantum Break and Max Payne and Alan Wake 1 and all their games in their history, and it's just all culminated together in this one game that is just like it's just Remedy's DNA like all over it, man. In the best ways possible. And like this isn't even like talking about the whole connected universe thing and how it also like ties in things from their previous other games, specifically Control, like the Control nods and Quantum Break nods, and seeing characters from those other games pop up in unexpected ways in this game. It's the thing about it too is that it's like it's you would think that, oh, this game is just being really self-indulgent. They're kind of like I'm not gonna say that other thing, but it's very self-indulgent of themselves, right? But then it's like they do it just the right amount that it never really feels that way. It never feels like Hideo Kojima games usually do sometimes, when he's got a game by Hideo Kojima edited by Hideo Kojima, when he has like his name like three times in a trailer or something like that. Like it never gets uh to that level. Like I don't know, everything just feels like extremely purposeful here and just weird in all the best ways, man. Um it's really really cool, and it's something special for sure. Do you guys have any questions about it or what? Because I could sing the praises of this game all day long.
I will say I did just buy it while I'm sitting here on the couch. I don't know if you guys heard my PlayStation beep.
I didn't.
Damn.
You talked me into it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's on my list for sure. So I'm gonna keep the questions to a minimum, except for the scary factor. You touched on
Ooh.
music and sort of those other things for like as far as what brings up the anxiety and attention. Is it more movie monster kind of scary, or is it more paranormal scary?
I'd probably say more paranormal.
Sweet, that's what I love.
Yeah, and like the thing is too is that like it's not even like, again, like the monsters themselves aren't scary. They're like, I don't know, they're at least the ones that I've ran into like with Saga, because I should mention that you play as two characters, Saga Anderson and Alan Wake himself. Alan Wake fights shadow monsters, which are pretty much the same as the ones that you fought in the first game. Saga Anderson fights something different. They're a little bit more Resident Evil type enemies, so it's like they're not too scary. But again, it's just like I really want to reiterate the audio design in this game. If this game doesn't win audio design in BAFTA or the Game Awards or whatever the case may be, like it is a tragedy, man. Because like again, like inherently the enemies you're fighting in this game are not you've seen them before, right? Like you won't be too surprised by them. At least the ones you fight as Saga Anderson. But again, it's just the way that they play with sound that is really the scary stuff, in my opinion. Um there are some jump scares, but not in the way that you think. It's not like, I mean, obviously there'll be like some enemies that jump out of like a bush or something like that. But like there's been some other jump scares of like how they integrate like the live action sort of things that just pop in at like a random moment when you're walking through the woods, and it's those moments have like I can't remember when I've been like that jump scared. Like what like me like almost like jumping out of my seat. Like I have been like really scared with playing this game so far. Um
Interesting.
but
Okay, cool. That's what I like to hear.
yeah.
Because Resident Evil 4 had a couple of jump scares for me so far, and the uh the Ashley sequence was pretty
Mhm.
good too, but I lost like the nerve wracking tensions about halfway through. And it's really because of, I mean, not lack of music, it's just the lack of sound there that wasn't really like driving the tension forward. There's a couple instances here and there when you hear like the creaking of the metal suits kind of going around,
Yeah.
the ones that are infected, stuff like that, which was cool. But even
Yeah.
then, I was just like, yeah, it's kind of dying out a little bit, and nothing so far has touched scary game design and just overall a whole sequence in Resident Evil Villages. Um,
The
the the
baby
the
part.
the baby, or it just, I forgot the actual
Oh my god.
the house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
the
dollhouse.
house. Yeah, I forgot what it was called though. Something.
I think they call it
Uh
the dollhouse.
Is it the dollhouse?
it's the
Yeah,
Benevenuto
yeah,
house or
yeah.
whatever.
Yep, yeah, the Beneviento house. Yeah, yeah. That was, talk about scaring the shit out of me, dude. I kid you not. I have some weird ways to cope with fear, right? And this one specifically for Resident Evil Village, I started rapping Eminem. I don't know why. I just did. I started singing "Lose Yourself." I have a recorder on PlayStation and everything. Sammy laughs at me all the time when we play it, and I don't blame her because it's hilarious. But yeah, I'm looking for another scare like that. Resident Evil 4 isn't doing that for me, so I'm hoping Alan Wake 2 is able to really get me going.
Yeah,
I
oh
gotta
god.
make sure, Macho. I gotta make sure I gotta reach out to you when Resident Evil 4 comes out for PSVR 2, and if you want to come over and check it out, that would be hilarious for me to watch. I played Resident Evil 4 on PSVR 2 at Tokyo Game Show. It's amazing, and of course, when the PSVR 2 launched, Village in VR. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's like one of the coolest video game experiences of my life.
Cool,
Yeah, I
cool.
bet. I definitely I definitely remember that Ashley sequence, and to me what made that scene so scary is like how helpless you were, cuz like you don't have a gun in that sequence, right?
For
Like,
Ashley, she
yeah, as
doesn't.
Ashley.
Yeah, she's alone. Then she gets the flashlight that's able to beam
Right.
at the knights, and then it gets taken away for like the last part of the sequence. You just have to run. Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's always those moments that like when you don't have the means to protect yourself that are always the scariest to me. It was the same thing with playing as Sherry in RE2, in the like little orphanage thing. Like those scenes are 10 times more scary than playing as Leon going up against Mr. X or whatever. Um but yeah, fuck, with Alan Wake 2, there is again like kind of going back to the idea of like these enemies themselves aren't inherently scary, but like another thing that they do with sound is that specifically the enemies that you go up against as Alan Wake, they're called the Shadows. Um Again, they're not inherently scary. You've probably seen them before. Although they move really weird, which is pretty cool. The thing that they do with sound with this particular enemy is that like when you kind of like get and it's kind of weird. They're not hostile, but eventually they will get to a point when they get hostile. But it's like the moment you start moving around them, they start like saying Alan Wake's name. Like they're just like Wake, Alan Wake. Like it's
Oh,
so
that's cool.
creepy. It's so creepy, but it's so good too. Um
That's pretty cool.
yeah. Um I also love like what they're doing with puzzles, just in the sense of like it really does feel like Resident Evil in the sense of like you have to find numbers to open up locks. There's shortcuts that get you back to like the beginning of levels and stuff like that. You'll very often get to a door that's locked, so you need to go find the key that's locked away in like another room, so you have to go there. Right, it's definitely RE in that sense, but I really like the sort of like light puzzles that they have in here in the sense of this is with Alan Wake. He has this like thing that's called like the lamp where he can basically take the light from like other lamps and store it in his little handheld lamp, and then you can then take that light that you have captured in your handheld lamp and then bring it to a lamp that doesn't have any light in it. And what this does is that these areas that are like illuminated, they basically protect you from the shadows. So you can't get hurt in these areas. They heal you as well. So they're like little safe zones that you kind of like need to be like moving between in order to like kind of like get a little bit of a break from the enemies and whatnot. Especially because it's just like everything in this game is so dark. It like finding these areas is really really nice. Um, but sometimes the thing about these is that when you take the light from these lamps, it changes the level in certain ways. So like there will be certain doors that are now that were blocked that now open up as soon as you take away the light, or when you go to another area and you put light into a lamp that doesn't have any light, it then opens up a new path or something like that. So like some levels actually change with these this whole like little light thing. So like it becomes an interesting little puzzle because there's some scenarios where you have to get to a specific location, but you can't get there with the way that the level is. So it almost feels like, I don't know if you guys played Dishonored 2, that one level where you're kind of like going back and forth between the two timelines. Did you guys ever play Dishonored 2?
No.
I didn't.
Or maybe even Titanfall 2. Gene, did you play Titanfall 2?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
Oh man.
Oh
I didn't
wow,
play
you
Titanfall
gotta
1 because I didn't have an Xbox.
you gotta correct that, but man, Titanfall 2 is, and I don't even like first person shooters, but that was
Well, it's kind of like those from both of those games in those two levels where you're kind of like you need to manipulate time between the two timelines, the past and the present, in order to access new areas. And it honestly kind of feels like that, but you're just manipulating light to give you access to new areas, and it almost kind of becomes like a little mini puzzle in those moments. Um, but yeah, it's really cool. The last thing I will say about this game is the whole Sam Lake kind of thing, because you guys know that he's in this game. You've seen, I'm sure you've seen his face in this game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So um and of course like the live action shots and or live action like moments. It's so like it is so like mind blowing in the sense of like this is a game about it. Sorry, it feels so meta in the sense that like so this is a game about Alan Wake, who is a writer, and the game revolves around his writing that comes to life. Um, and so within Alan Wake's writing, he has a character called Alex Casey, who is at least the face model is Sam Lake. So Sam Lake is a character who is in Alan Wake's writing that comes alive, but then at the same time, Sam Lake is the guy who wrote Alan Wake. So it's just like it's this really bizarre, like little. I don't know if that made any sense, but like it is this little bizarre, just like a rabbit hole that is just like it's so cool and so weird and bizarre, but like it all just kind of works.
you're a
At
fraud.
least.
You're a fraud, so you're a fucking
In
fraud,
what
bro.
way? In what way?
Kingdom Hearts was up your alley, my
Oh my
guy.
god, please. Kingdom Hearts is not doing this.
And Kingdom Hearts been doing this in 2006, brother. What are you talking about?
It's a little bit different than it being like Alan Wake. and having all these horror elements, and then it being like goofy, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, don't even
Exactly.
get there. Don't even get there. Goofy died for these sins, man. What are you talking about? That's so fucked
Exactly.
up, man. So fucked up.
And that's not even, and can Sora go from he's watching TV and it's like a TV show of himself like in the TV, and then you press X and you enter the TV, and then you jump right into a live action cutscene of yourself like on a TV show.
That's
Can you
very
do that?
specific. That's very
Can you do that in
specific.
Kingdom Hearts?
Why are
No,
you
you can't.
why are you asking for an apple to taste like an orange? What's wrong with you?
Exactly. You can't. You can't do that. But yeah, and then again, that it's not even like I didn't even mention the whole mind place sort of mechanic and the dark place mechanic where it's like Saga Anderson and Alan Wake have these like abilities where they can like subconsciously go into like this like special room in their mind. So for Saga, hers is like a it's like an office room where she has like her whole like it's like the whole Charlie Day meme of like the investigation board, and he has like the pieces of yarn connecting all these like note cards, to one another. It's like as you're solving or as you're going through these murder cases and various other cases, your every piece of information that you get, you're adding it to the board and you're connecting the dots yourself. It's not the most complicated thing, but it does make you feel like you're an actual like investigator, like putting together the pieces of like this bigger plot. Um, and it's a really really cool aspect of the game. It feels kind of like what I wanted Batman Arkham Knight to be, in the sense of like how like that always felt like it was just like the game kind of doing it for you, right? Like Batman would just kind of
100%. Yeah.
yeah, he would just piece everything together himself. All you needed to do was just like hold the camera a certain way and hold a button, and that was it. But like here, it's like you're actually it, it's not like you're not doing anything too hard, but it's like you are putting the note cards in specific order in specific places, and you are connecting things, and I think that's a pretty cool aspect of this game for sure. Um, but
Nice.
yeah, that's Alan Wake 2, man. Just especially coming off of Control, man. This feels like, in a lot of ways, this feels like everything that Remedy has kind of been like building up towards, man. And just what an achievement, man. For that studio, like I couldn't be happier for that team, man.
Cool. And
So
I like Control when I played on PS5. I liked it a lot, so I'm excited.
it's funny. It's funny that I didn't play the AWE expansion. But the little section that I'm playing in as Alan Wake, there's like little graffiti marks all over New York with the initials AWE. So it's like it's really cool, man.
Did
Um,
you play Alan Wake 1?
did I?
Yeah.
Way back in the day, but not on PS4, the remaster they did.
Oh, okay. All right.
But
Because I haven't played it, so I'm wondering if like this is like a good jumping in point.
yeah, I think it still is a good jumping on point. Um,
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
Cool.
Yeah, I played Alan Wake 1 back in the day, and then I played Control. Love Control. Control is one of my favorite PS4 games. It's definitely in my top 100 games of all time. Uh, and I just kind of wanted to replay Alan Wake, replay Control, play the Control DLC for the first time ever, and then next year when the physical came out, play Alan Wake 2. But you guys sold me on it, so I bought it, and I'll play it this weekend.
Hell yeah. I, I
Nice.
would I would honestly say that like you should maybe I don't know. You definitely I would say probably Alan Wake is more important to play, but like I also feel like Control, you should definitely play that as well too, because like I'm a little bit not shocked, but just surprised at the number of Control. Like it really does feel like it's all just one world. Like there is maybe I'm overselling it, but I'm just a little surprised that there's a lot of Control nods and callbacks and characters appearing in really interesting and unexpected ways. The Bureau of Control is like they are a part of this world, man, and you see a lot of evidence of that, and it's so cool, man.
How long ago did you play Control?
Bro, 2019. But what's funny is I still remember, and this game is jogging my memory about that stuff a lot. But yeah, I still remember a lot of the characters from that game. Obviously, the janitor, obviously Darling, who was in like the live action
Yep.
sort of cutscenes with that game, right? Um, he's yeah, I definitely remember him. Obviously Jesse Faden. But yeah, just the more like bureau stuff too is kind of what my mind playing through this game is kind of what's jogging my memory the most for sure.
Yeah, I never got to go back and play the DLC, and I never got to replay Alan Wake, so I was just kind of holding off. But I'm definitely in now.
See, yeah, I always intended to play the AWE expansion. I was actually really
Yep.
looking forward to that. And I never got to it, so I do wonder how that connects. I almost wish I played it before I started Alan Wake 2, but
Interesting.
um
Okay.
yeah, so
Then I think I'll take that. I'll take that route. Maybe I could like stream it or something, where I
oh,
go.
so you didn't know what the AWE thing was?
I knew what it was. I knew it was like it was like a crossover DLC,
Gotcha, gotcha.
but that's really all I know. And at that point, I didn't really care. Uh, because that
Right.
was like that was until like maybe after I played Control, but still wasn't super into it. But I didn't play like a
Yeah,
DLC for not DLC. I didn't play like most of the side content for Control. I just kind of just went through the main story. But if you're saying that there's a little bit more reward if you play those games, then
yeah,
I'm all game. Yeah, I think I'll check them out. I'll probably stream them. That'll be a lot of fun.
yeah. I think so for sure. Um, and then I think the last thing I'll say is I haven't gotten to this point, but apparently a lot of the reviewers and people that I trust have been saying that there's a moment that surpasses the ashtray maze, which I'm guessing you guys know what that moment is from Control.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
That's what made me be like, yo, this game is nuts. This game is
yeah, yeah,
freaking wild, dog.
yeah. And apparently, yeah, apparently there's a sequence in this game that is even wilder than that, and I cannot wait to get there. So, um, yeah, that is Alan Wake 2, man. Just what a game. Yeah, I can't wait to keep playing it. And again, like Macho, you know, like it takes a special game for me to kind of put away my like my me being scared 24/7. Also, I'm playing this game in the dark too, which makes it even like I don't know why I do that with horror games. Like I just want to be immersed. I want to be like the most scared that I can be. Like I don't know, maybe I like to suffer, but like I don't know. I think it's the mark of a really special game if like someone like me gets scared so easily and typically like stays away from horror as a genre is still like going through this game because just like everything about it is just so incredible. So yeah, man. Um yeah, what a game. All right. That is going to do it for the games that we've been playing. Flame, good to see you in the chat. Thank you for stopping by. Um, let us move on to let's talk about Connie Booth. Let's start with that.
Yeah, man.
Um, yeah, so this was and Gene, I think you can probably attest to this that this was kind of like tipped off to us by David Jaffe. You know, and say I usually personally I usually don't go to him for for things like this, but like this was he was kind of like the first person that at least from recent era that I was seeing people kind of starting to bring up like, hey, Jaffe is saying XYZ, and then eventually he came out and clarified that like no, it's Connie Booth, like she has been fired from PlayStation or whatever, blah blah blah. So yeah, Connie Booth after what 30 some odd years at Sony, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she's
Sony.
yeah, she's gone. This is always but before I pass it on to you guys, let me just give some quick context. This is someone alongside like Scott Rhodey. I feel like they are like the unsung heroes of like PlayStation Studios and always have been in terms of like these two are like uh producers. They're like also correct me if I'm wrong, like also some of the people that like greenlight a lot of these projects. Like Connie specifically has been like she's seen through like Uncharted, I believe like Infamous, the Spider-Man games. I mean, obviously we know that she was like instrumental in connecting Insomniac and Marvel for Spider-Man. Um, I believe like Ratchet and Clank as well. Sly Cooper, like she's produced and has been a part of like quite possibly like majority of PlayStation's like biggest franchises. Um, so to see her leave, man, is like really, it feels like the end of an era and like just the saddest possible, right? Because it does feel like, a lot of the old guard is starting to go, and make of it what you will. I fully expect Shu not to be around much longer. I feel like he's next just because like he's getting up there in age, So like I don't expect him to be here that much longer. At PlayStation, I'm not saying he's gonna pass or anything like that.
Jesus, man, you already
Um,
put the energy into the
yeah,
air. We got
yeah,
what you
Oh
was saying,
man.
brother.
all right,
Oh
all
no.
right.
This man's
Um,
to say about to have his last sushi tonight. Like
oh
Jesus.
man. But yeah, it just really feels like an end of an era. And the last thing I'll say before I pass it on to Eugene, I don't know how I don't know what you took away from her leaving, but I think the biggest thing that I got was this wasn't a Jim Ryan, oh, you get a blog post, you get a tweet of us, thanking you for your contributions to PlayStation and blah blah blah, right? Very cordial, very professional. Connie Booth didn't get anything. She didn't get a blog post. She didn't get a tweet. Even Sean Layden, when that situation was kind of like murky and there was like talks of that not being the most like amicable kind of split. Sean Layden still got a tweet from the PlayStation account, right? But like Connie Booth, it was just like swept under the rug. Like we are not talking about you, despite you being instrumental to our brand, despite you, being the key to like so many of our studios like success. Like we aren't even acknowledging what you gave to this company. Like we're not acknowledging that you left. Like it from the outside looking in, like I see all of that, and I feel like there was some real, like how everything went down. There was like some really bad blood. Like it was a really, really bad sort of split between the two. So I don't know if you kind of got that as well, Gene. But what's your overall kind of like thoughts on this?
I my immediate thought is Jason Schreier's next book is going to be so good. Um,
You're not wrong, man.
like a lot of organizations that provide a service or are creative, and I know Sony works this way too. From a high level, you could literally split the company in half. And on the left side is arts, creative, um, motion capture, cinematics, music. On the right side is, and I don't mean Sony proper, I mean PlayStation. On the right side is IT, infrastructure, engineering, hardware, finance, accounting, all that stuff. And the way that I view it was whether or not she reported to Herman, I don't know. But I view her on the right side, the non creative side, overseeing all of that. And it's very clear that thousands and thousands, if not millions, of companies around the world, when they have their financial reporting this past June, the the advisement that a lot of companies were getting, and I talked about this in LongNet in our thread, it was very clear the advisement they were getting was, look, inflation's gonna be going away, and uh, the economy is going to devolve. And the way that, at least America, and I think this is true with other economies too, the way that the America is combating inflation is by deflating the economy, right? You have to. A lot of people are going to have to suffer in order to fix inflation. And at first, I thought it was going to be all the NFT bros, all the crypto bros. I thought that they were all going to take a pounding, and then that's how our economy would restabilize. What I didn't think would happen was the gas would be like $4 a gallon for 2 years, and there's no signs of it going away. And the cost of everything is going up, and we're so far gone now that there's no going. Like it feels like there's no going back. Like the milk producing companies aren't going to wake up tomorrow and say, "Oh, let's take a gallon off the." The economy's going back down again, so let's take $1 off the gallon of milk. The gas station attendants aren't, or the gas station owners aren't going to say, let's stop making $1 a gallon and let's go back to making 10, 15, 20 cents a gallon and put gas where it was. It's just not going to happen. People are spending more than they're making in our country. Credit card debt is at an unbelievable rate, and this is unsustainable. And what happened with Sony is what was incredibly, I don't know if this is exactly what happened with Connie, but what I do know that this is what happened with Sony is because it happened to thousands and millions of other companies around the world. Epic got rid of 900 people. Bungie got rid of 100. Sony probably got rid of 100 or 200 themselves, whatever the number may be. But and Microsoft has let go thousands of people, thousands of people to the point.
They started the year with 10,000 layoffs.
Right. And they're talking about, there was a joke about getting rid of Game Pass. I work with Microsoft engineers in my 9 to 5 every day, and they brag to me about how they get Game Pass for free, and we joke and we talk about video games all the time. And I was going to catch up with them, but by the time I could even catch up with them about the news, they had reverted. So like cost cutting is going down everywhere. So now that is the background story to whatever's going on at PlayStation with the layoffs and where the games as a services and what happened with Connie. That is the background. You can tell that something happened with the numbers there. And Sony parent told Jim, hey, buddy, bad news. The $20 billion you've been spending every year, and you've been hiring up a storm, and you guys have been writing blank checks to your teams, and a lot of your teams are working on 2, 3, 4 games, and you have all these support studios now. Yeah, we're not going to be able to do all that. And what I can't wait to see is their financial reporting, and we should know this. Like, we should look this up and know this. Their financial reporting, I believe, is on Wednesday, and I don't know. It's usually like Japanese time in the middle of the day, so it's like 3 o'clock in the morning our time. But we should look that up, and we should know when that's going to be. I think it's Wednesday in Japan. They always have PlayStation talk, and you know how like we wake up sometimes and there's like a ton of news on BGC from the financial reporting. Like that is coming next week. And the last time they did this, there was 25 live service games, and they were live service heavy, and everything's going great, and they're expanding, and the money's down right now because we just paid Bungie and we just paid off that Bungie debt. But we're going to be good to go next quarter, and Spider-Man's coming out, and we're going to ship 25 million PS5s. Well, you could tell that something was wrong, and I knew this was going on in June because every company in the world, like I said, was going through this. They cut the price of the PS5, right? So they went from like wishing they could charge $700 for this thing to now charging $450 for the Call of Duty bundle, for the God of War bundle on sale, and cutting out some of the hardware, having that slim model to get so to get some more money from that. Because they're desperately trying to meet that $25 million target. And I think if they could give out PlayStation 5s for free right now for like a day or a week, they absolutely would, to like try to get that goal. Because they don't want to come back and have a bad reporting, because they're going to do everything they can to bury what the real story is. But the reasoning, the why behind all of this is definitely financially related. She is in charge of the business side of PlayStation, and something went wrong. Something happened. And you don't know if it's Naughty Dog being upset about the multiplayer game, and you don't know if it's 3 years of them investing in live service, or maybe 4 years investing in live service, and they wake up one day and they look around at how the live service thing is going, and it's garbage. The Naughty Dog thing's in trouble. Thankfully, we have the director today going on Twitter and saying the game's still in production, but trouble nonetheless, right? And now they probably don't even want to make that game anymore because the HBO show did so well. Sony would much rather have them making The Last of Us 3. And that's probably what happened. They're probably moving people to make The Last of Us 3 as fast as they can so that they can get in line with that HBO show and keep selling crazy numbers of that game. you look at Fair Games, and that is not being received well by the media and by the press. They're talking to people like Greg Miller behind the scenes in IGN, and people giving them honest feedback that like it looks like a Ubisoft original. And the Concord game we don't know anything about, and I don't know how true it is. It sounds like hearsay. It sounds like a rumor, but there's the rumor out there that the Tarkov streamers were flown out to play Marathon and they didn't like it. And then you have the Deviation games, and I thought what they were going to do. I wasn't so worried about Call of Duty because I was like, oh, what's Deviation working on? Like this could be the next game. Like this could be the next SOCOM. This could be the next Call of Duty. Like this is going to be something. And now that Deviation game is gone. That we know that's canceled, and they're like dead in the water. So and Twisted Metal got moved around. So I think that's Sony proper going, and you can tell because the chief financial person is now in charge of Sony. You can tell exactly what happened. There's a financial situation. There's a negative financial situation in Sony, and they're not able to grow. And now at a time where they absolutely positively need to grow to compete with Microsoft, they don't have the capital to do that. And all the irons in the fire it looks like they're going to be duds. And there was this mindset of let's make 12 live service games because God forbid if one of them's Fortnite, we're going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. Well, okay, they've got 12 live service games going. Probably 5 of them are canceled, and everything we've seen looks bad. Am I wrong? Do you guys think these live service games, like, are you interested in any of these games, either of you?
I mean, Macho, go ahead.
Nope.
I'm a huge Sony fanboy. I love everything they do. I'm just not interested in any of these games.
I mean, Macho, we've talked about this before, that like I love the heist genre, so like Fair Games and on paper that should be my jam. Like I just on a pure on paper, like what they're pitching that game to be, yes, like I'm interested. What I saw of it, no. I still feel like I want to reserve judgment until we actually see these things in motion, because they just revealed both of those games, Concord and Fair Games, in the worst way possible. Concord, just like, come on, like how are you going to release a, what was it, like under 30-second CGI trailer that tells you nothing about the game except that it's taking place in like a alien aesthetic sort of space, like 1970s aesthetic, but like in space. There's a word for that, but I'm blanking on it. But like, yeah, less than 30 seconds basically tells you nothing, and then it's coming out in 2024, and it's just like, how, like, I'm in I go to school for marketing, and I'm just like, okay, the game is coming out theoretically in less than a year, you would imagine, and we still have no idea. So you're just gonna have like less than a year of marketing to really amp people up for this game? I mean, I guess, but that seems like a really tough hill to climb, you know?
Yeah, those 3 games are not. They're not going to come out. I've always been saying one of the 3 is going to make it. With Marathon getting delayed, because they were on the open discussions with Marathon, and that was the game we saw the most of, and that was the game we heard the most about. But that was the one that people were playing behind the scenes. They said that they were going to come back at that time next year, which was like May, June, and they were kind of hinting at early access, alpha beta type of thing, right? So like I thought for sure that we would be playing Marathon by the end of the year. Sony's gonna put out what they can put out by June, maybe August, and then they're gonna get out of the way of Grand Theft Auto 6 if that really is coming out this year, and nobody would know that better than Sony. I don't think that they're gonna have. I think they're gonna have a bad year. And I think that is also tied into the financial situation. We see they've got a very compelling first quarter lined up of all these cool games. It's another great year of third-party games, but they're going to move out of the way of Grand Theft Auto 6. They're not going to put, if that game's coming out in September, so Sony will not release a game between September and January, and they will not release a game in July or August, and they probably won't release a game in June either.
I mean,
so if that, huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
Well, I was just gonna say that, yeah, I really kind of want to like like hammer in that point of 2024 for Sony first party. it it's gonna be another stale year. Like I hate to say it, but like it's funny because like if you go on, I think it was the PlayStation website, like they had this time last year they had this like big sort of like section on their page. I was like upcoming PS5 games for the start of 2023 to fall 2023, and you know they had like all these games on there, and then of course they had Spider-Man 2 on there, and then it's like you do the same thing for now, and it's just like we just don't like look, I'm sure Helldivers 2 is gonna be cool, but then it's like okay, you revealed that in May, have not really talked about it since. And, like I feel like no one even knows that this game like exists because there just hasn't been in like oh okay yeah it wasn't that last state of play, but like just in general like I feel like you're not doing enough to drudge up excitement for that. Concord, who knows what that game is gonna be, right? And then who knows if Death Stranding 2 will come next year. So it's just like it's just a lot of unknowns, and yeah, I'm fully expecting next year to be just as dry as it was this year, first party wise.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have a great first half of the year. And what you're talking about, where we're not seeing Helldivers 2, and you know what's the plan and what are we doing? This is the real pain point that they're going to suffer by this. I don't know what I'm sure Connie Booth leaving is. I can't say. I don't work there. Who knows? Maybe she's a terrible person. Maybe she's the reason why all these games are great and they're screwed from here on out. I can't tell you. The worry that David Jaffe had is also worrying to me because like he knows the inside of the company better than anybody else on the outside at the highest levels. So but like the big here is it's another transition during this console generation. They started this console generation on a leadership transition. A lot of things were in flux, and it was a major identity shift in how they treated and how they communicated. You didn't see the personalities anymore. There wasn't a lot of events anymore. And now we're coming into the second half of the console generation. The Pro console is going to come out next year. Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out next year. And it's another transition of ideas. And when you have a transition at the top, it is a complete systematic change of how you view everything. The marketing person's going to change, the accounting person's going to change, and obviously production is going to change, right? Maybe Herman's going to say, and you think that Shu is going to leave, and you're probably right. I don't think Shu will be there past this console generation.
Yeah.
They are going to, so the people that replace him at the top are going to have completely different visions, and that's going to send seismic waves down and reprioritize what they view as important. And this console generation started off with those AA games, those art house games. Get them out of here. Let's stop paying for them. Let's outsource them. And so that shift cost them about 4 or 5 extra games that were going to come out this console generation. Instead of having 3 teams at SIE Japan shooting out games, those teams aren't making anything for a couple more years because they're still transitioning to their new teams, their new places, their new publishers. And Sony doesn't have those games to fill these gaps. And I just think there's going to be another transition, and something the live service stuff is a perfect example. So one team is fully dedicated to that. If the new leadership comes on and they're not fully dedicated to this live service stuff, you're going to see more than 5 games canceled. And if that Fair Games, like I'm with you. I am actually, I love the concept. I will play it. It looks interesting, but the art direction, if that comes out and it's got the Ubisoft stink on it, and it comes out like that all-star racing game, right? If it even is approaching that, they're going to close that studio.
Yeah. I I I think my one solace in all of this, and kind of tying into the live service stuff, is that like what they have done and have they kind of like navigated this whole like expansion into live service is that they've partnered with external studios to make this, for the most part, external studios to do this for them. So a Firewalk, a Deviation, before it all went the toilet, a Deviation, a Haven, et cetera, et cetera. But then like also, yes, you have Naughty Dog working on one, you have London working on one, Insomniac apparently is making a multiplayer game as well. But then like you also supplement that, like Sucker Punch is still working on Ghost of Tsushima, we expect. Housemarque is they're working on a brand new IP. We know Corey is making his own game. We know Neil is working on something new, right? You can go down the line. Obviously, Guerrilla's probably going to be making Horizon 3 on top of the Horizon multiplayer game. So it's like why I've always kind of been hesitant to kind of like immediately reject the live service stuff is because like it still feels like the single player focused teams that have always who have always made single player games are still doing that for the most part. Didn't even bring up Blue Point, right? Whereas for the most part, a lot of the live service things have gone off to other teams that they have acquired, right? Same thing with
Mhm.
Fire Sprite, like they just absorbed the Twisted Metal game, even though I talked to you about the issues that Fire Sprite may be having themselves too. But yeah, like, are you seeing that as well? There's just the fact that like it still feels like single player teams are still working on single player, whereas live service is kind of being given to other external teams who are then brought into the fold.
Well, the cool thing was always, and I'm not a live service guy. I'm not a multiplayer guy. I am the single player narrative linear story guy. But the cool thing was always it's more games. Like I complain about SIE Japan closing. SIE Japan closes, but now they've got 12 live service games in addition to the regular single player stuff that we would get. But if they're gonna close down Haven because the game stinks, that's less games. If they've already ended the thing with Aviation, that's less games because like that could have been 3 games. I don't. Who knows? And maybe their game was awful,
Exactly.
but I like it's the pro is gone because we're getting less games now, and and on that, I can't wait to hear this financial statement thing because they're going to say how many games are in production, and that number is going to be really critical to how I feel about them going forward. And I just think it's going to be an ugly transition where a lot of stuff gets canceled. There's going to be a reshifting of ideology. And back to your original question, is this all Connie Booth's fault? And that is totally impossible.
Yeah.
But she was in charge while these things happened. And if Naughty Dog is upset that they're making a multiplayer game that sucks and they want to go make The Last of Us 3 and they're being forced to make this multiplayer game, which people have said that is the case, that's a problem. And that is she driving that? And is she driving that because the financial situation was bad? And now does the transition or the pivot to new leadership make the financial situation even worse because these games that we're supposed to start releasing this year and bringing in revenue, not only are they not going to release this year, they're not going to release next year.
Yeah, because they said by what, like, I think it was by March 2023, their goal was to have already released like 3 of these live service games, and they
Mhm.
have missed that goal like by a significant margin.
And that was Twisted Metal, probably not The Last of Us, but
But we still expected
that
that game to be well, maybe not, maybe expect is too strong of a word, but like we definitely thought that that was a possibility that it could release sometime in 2023. The way that Neil was talking about it, especially at what was it? The Summer Games Fest that one year when he was like,
mm,
"Oh, you will hear a lot more about this game, next year." And that was like 2022, I think he said. Or no, he was probably referring to 2023 that we would hear more about that game or whatever. But
yeah,
I
and
was
especially if
thinking
you're
at
talking
least it
about
was
financial,
possible.
huh?
Oh, that
I
I
was going
was
to say,
thinking it was
especially,
possible. Yeah.
yeah, especially if you're talking about, I was just saying the same exact thing you were saying, especially if you're talking about the financial year, right? When they're making these statements during investor calls and presentations, when they say this game is going to come out, by March of this fiscal year or the next fiscal year, that is, a few months from now. So I think that it's a possibility that that was one of them. If it was March of 2023 this year, no, I don't think so. But if it was March of this fiscal year, that's this coming March. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am with that. But it was probably Helldivers, Twisted Metal, MLB, and I hate to say it, but maybe even Firewall. But counting in that, although maybe they're not counting it in that.
I mean, they're just weird in general because they don't even count Gran Turismo 7 is a live service, which is shocking to me, you know.
You'll see they'll start to count it though. They will. MLB was always counted as one of them, but you'll see they'll start to count Twisted Metal. It's tough because they don't have like regular monetization like an MLB would, because MLB is going to be the number one selling game, top 25 NPDs of the year every year, whereas Gran Turismo is going to have one major year and then be a blip on the radar like for 5 years.
Right, right. Yeah. Macho, get you in here, man. What's
No, I'm good, man. I'm good. That
um
conversation was plenty enough. Like that
yeah,
was eye opening, you know.
yeah, because like because you know me, man, that I've kind of been the one that's been like, guys, let's just wait, like, they got things cooking. We haven't seen pretty much majority of what they are working on because they didn't show anything at the showcase. So like, let's just hold our horses and chill. But like lately, I don't know, man. I've really been starting to feel a little bit frustrated because just like we start hearing about like all this stuff, and again, this could all blow over and they could be fine and continue to. I mean, they just released Spider-Man 2, so it's like the most important thing, which is the first party games, is still great as usual, but it's like it's just hard with everything that's been kind of going around and that we're hearing happening in the background and all these changes. It's I don't know, man. I'm just feeling a little frustrated right now. So you see this news with Connie leaving, man. What do you think about all this?
Not good. Not good at all, to be honest. It feels like we had the writing on the wall when it came to the showcase. We just didn't know it yet. And now we have all these changes, which could be for the good part, right? Like, because one of the exciting things we talked about when Jim Ryan was leaving was that who's the next guy that's gonna come up that's actually gonna have like a new face for PlayStation. That's exciting. That one part's exciting. The other part could be damning. You know, we just have to find out with time and see how that goes. But with Connie Booth leaving, maybe it was just time, you know, for her exit and for her to do something else in her career, and maybe they parted ways on good terms. You know, they just wanted to keep it quiet. Maybe because from one of the things that I'm sure that you've seen, so that as soon as people were like, "Oh yeah, Connie Booth is leaving PlayStation," there's a lot of "Who's that?"
Yeah, yeah,
So it could have been the fact that she just wanted this to stay quiet instead of making like a big, you know, put it on a blog post and have a celebratory LinkedIn post about my time at PlayStation. Maybe she's not like that. So for all we know, it could be the complete opposite. But the thing is, you guys bring up a lot of great points just about the finances of PlayStation lately and what's going on with these live service games and how the trend of live service is just dying down completely. And we're seeing these live service games die left and right at every corner, and it's kind of baffling, right? It's not even survival of the fittest; it's survival of just who can make the most money at one time. And if you don't keep that train floating, then you're gone, right? I mean, we've seen Fortnite blow up and still staying at the top. You have Genshin Impact, which is a worldwide success, and even Honkai Star Rail, which is like their newest one. And a lot of these things seem like just it feels like it's too good to be true kind of thing. And it feels like PlayStation chasing after that. It seems weird on that end. Like we understand why they want to do it because they want that constant money flow, whichever, you know, franchise it spawns from or whatever new franchise it is. But it also just seems very knee jerk reaction. That's what kind of felt off about it when they have 10 projects in development. And Gene, to your point too, I don't know if they fully meant that they that these 10 projects, some of them will, the most of them will fail. We just hope that one catches on, and it's just a weird way to kind of like manage your studios and shift everything. I don't
Oh no,
know.
I no, they didn't say that. That's just kind of something that like we like. I guess like the community typically
Yeah,
says in the sense of like that. Yeah, like it feels like they're well, yeah, exactly. That it just kind of like pays for itself. If you just have like one of these succeed, then like you should be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of I'm just applying like kind of common sense where it's like if they trip and fall into a Call of Duty or into a Fortnite, it is going to change how their finances are. They'll never have to worry about money again.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of an exaggeration,
it's
but
just like what franchise is that gonna be? Because they're putting all their bucket of coins into Horizon, which is
It's
evident.
gotta be it's gotta be a new franchise then, and that's what we thought Deviation's game could be.
Okay.
So now we now my chips are going to Firewalk's game, Concord. That it's gotta be that because that game is being made by a bunch of Destiny and Halo people. So
Right.
that's that's the plan B for me, I
I mean,
guess.
and
my stake on it was always Last of Us, which is why it baffles me that that game isn't out yet, and why it's frustrating why that game isn't out yet. And now, I mean, it ties into the other topic that we have here, but it's even more it's frustrating the fact that now that game's like seems like in complete limbo. I know the game director went on Twitter, so yeah, I'm working on that game, but I'm not believing anything until I actually see something now. And
yeah,
we're not even gonna get into that, but like, yeah, it's a case in point. It's just it doesn't seem good now that Connie Booth left PlayStation, and they don't have what they seem to need.
the frustrating thing for me is that any one of us could do a better job of what's going on over there. And that may be the problem with Connie Booth, right? The answer was always
Mm.
when you're looking at this Destruction All Stars game, it should have been Twisted Metal from day one. The console should have launched with Twisted Metal. No, any one of us would have looked at that game and said, I think Twisted Metal's a better idea. Why don't we make it darker? Have it be the same damn game, make it darker, put the Twisted Metal characters in it, have someone come in and do a story. We'll have expansions. We'll treat it like a episodic thing, like
They could have
Killer
tied it to the
Instinct
TV
was
show.
tied to the TV show. Any one of us could have thought that up. It doesn't take a genius to do that. Instead, they did that garbage game and then had them do Twisted Metal after the fact, and then realized that game was so bad they couldn't have them touch Twisted Metal. Now Twisted Metal is too important, and all of us know
You
that
heard that, Soul? He
we
said it
could
was a
have just
garbage game. You heard that? I just want to make sure you heard
Yeah, whatever.
that.
uh,
Okay.
all of us know how do you combat losing Call of Duty in 10 years? If you start making SOCOM when Microsoft bought them, you probably have your first SOCOM game in the next one, like when Microsoft first announced they were buying them, you probably have your first SOCOM game coming out in 1 to 2 years, and then by the time the series ends or the the exclusivity window ends on the 10-year mark, you're releasing SOCOM 3 or SOCOM 4, and that is back, and that is a tentpole franchise, and people are looking for something new. Battlefield's gone. I'm sure it's going to come back, but it's gone, and now it's just Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty, and we all know how these things go with the live service games. They bounce around and back, and but some of these games stay in the top 20, and like I think that's where Bungie's going to be very helpful. But for the most part, these games like they come and go. Like Rocket League and Dota and what's the other one that is in the universe of the Dota game or League of Legends? What's the one that's in the shooter that's in the League of Legends universe?
Oh, I
Is
don't
it
know actually. Apex
Valorant.
Legends.
oh Valorant?
Valorant.
Oh, Valorant. Yeah.
Valorant. Yeah, Apex Legends. Like people just keep bouncing around between these games. So uh, I just I think any one of us could have done a better job than what they did. I could look at Fair Games and go, "This is a great idea. It stinks like Ubisoft. Change it.
But at
It looks
but
like
at
you're
the same
trying to be
time,
Ubisoft."
don't reveal it that way.
Right.
Show us the game in action. Like I I think there's a time and place for CGI trailers. Um
And
especially
that
when
wasn't it.
well, yeah, because like I typically, and I say this all the time, I'm typically okay with CGI trailers if it's like for announcing a game for the first time. Like I don't know, I'm typically okay with that. But I don't know when it's something like this, when I feel like we really needed to see this game in action, and then it doesn't help that the game is fucking called Fair Games with the dollar sign on it when you know this game is gonna be microtransaction to hell. It's like all that stuff just doesn't help, you know. Um, I don't know, man.
Yep, and the Last of Us game should have just been a Division clone, and you could have some of these Ubisoft people you hired work on it. And the Horizon game, I'm sure this is going to be the case. It should just be a Monster Hunter clone. Like that's what you do. It's not a rocket science person. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to like figure this stuff out. And maybe that's why it's gone, and maybe that's why that's a big shakeup, because like we're sitting on our couches and we can figure this stuff out. We haven't been at Sony for 30 years making, seven figures.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like this all kind of compounds to the PlayStation's mobile division. The woman that they brought on from Apple, and she came over to lead PlayStation Mobile. She leaves, right? So it's like that's another like big departure that just kind of
Yep.
makes you think like what's going on. And then like Gene, like I talked to you about the Fire Sprite thing. Macho, I don't know if this made it to your timeline or whatever, but like the game director over at Firesprite, who is working on the unannounced PlayStation 5 horror game, narrative horror game, like he left the studio, and there's like
Oh, what?
rumblings. What?
What? He left the studio?
Firesprite. He left Firesprite.
Wow.
Yeah. Which again, that game hasn't been announced or anything like that, but like, that's a studio that like people were really excited about because like they're one of the biggest studios in the UK. They have a ton of people over there. They're working on a bunch of things.
Yeah, we talked
Um,
about that a bunch of times on this podcast.
yes, and there's rumblings, which I don't know. I take these other things that was apparently quote unquote leaked about what's going on at that studio with a massive grain of salt, but like there's rumblings that that studio is not looking too hot and Sony's not doing the best with that studio. So like I don't know, just like again, hearing all these things all happening, like Gene, like all these things happening relatively like in a close window, right? Like it just feels like all of this is happening at the same time. It's just like it's just adding to my frustration, my uneasiness, and again, I feel like this could all be, and maybe only temporarily, but this could all be like erased if.
So I got you. Oh,
Okay,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
finish. Go ahead. You finish. You
Well,
finish.
I was
You
just
be
gonna say
raised.
all of this would be erased if you know at that showcase, the biggest hang up that I will always have with that showcase is that like for the people who have all these concerns about them focusing on the live service and leaving behind the single player, they really fed into that narrative because they had a total of what, 4 PlayStation Studios games at that showcase, and how many of them were live service? Oh, 3. Like between Concord, Fair Games, and Helldivers, and Spider-Man was the only single player game. So like I feel like they fed into that narrative of them, focusing on live service and leaving single player behind. So
Mm.
like I feel like that like all this would have been rectified if they showed up to that showcase and were like, bam, here's what Blue Point's working on. Bam, here's Corey's game. Here's Neil's next game. Like here's Tsushima too. Even if it's like a CGI trailer, we already know what that game is going to be like. So like I don't mind that. But like, yeah, here's all these single player games. Bam, I would still be kind of concerned about everything that's happening, but like at least I can point to all these single player games that are, that are in the oven currently.
Yeah. So I have some good news for you, or some bad news.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh, are
I have
you our
heard this.
PlayStation leaker, man? Are you our PlayStation
No.
insider? Let's go.
I am. It is the exact opposite. It is the exact opposite. I'm just pointing out all the quote unquote leakers. I have heard this week. I'm not kidding. This has been, these seem to be very substantial verified rumors.
I'll do Shocker Sense
I've
exclusives.
heard
Let's
that
go.
Insomniac has canceled their multiplayer game. They had layoffs, and they are trying to hide the fact that they have layoffs. But of course, Spider-Man's done. They eliminated people. I heard that the multiplayer game at Sucker Punch has been terminated, and they have layoffs. I have heard that. That of course we've heard that the Last of Us multiplayer game was canceled, and there were layoffs there. I have heard that Corey's game is on the shelf, and they're going to make them do God of War.
No.
I have heard all of this stuff, and that like everyone at Naughty Dog is working on The Last of Us 3. This all can't be true. It can't be. It's not possible. And that is why this investor call is going to be so important, because there are so many. It's not even possible for all of these stories and rumors to be true. And as for Firesprite, maybe the horror game is the Hitchcock game that has been on the leaks on those spreadsheets for like 3 years. And maybe it's a VR. They have the VR horror series that they work on. It could be anything, right? And I'm not really worried about one person leaving, although it is another, where there's smoke, there's fire. However, all of these stories cannot be true. Like, there is no way. I have heard now at every single Sony first party studio about a canceled game and about a team of layoffs. It's not possible.
Yeah. I mean, let's hope, man. And yeah, we should theoretically be getting a lot of answers, with this call coming up.
What is that call?
So
Uh,
I've just looked it up. It's going to be I think it starts, or the link opens up at 2 a.m. On the 9th, Thursday, and then it starts at 3 a.m. I can't quite tell based on the verbiage, but it either starts at 2 or starts at 3 a.m. our time. It looks like it starts at 3 a.m. our time
okay.
Okay. So
on Thursday.
at least before Jim Ryan's exit in
At,
April.
Yeah, at every single one of these silly IR calls, not the big ones, but the quarterly ones where they have small updates,
Yeah.
they have Jim Ryan go with Herman, and they say we have this many games in production.
Oh, it's an
And
IR call.
yeah,
Okay. So yeah,
at,
that's the big one then.
well, at the yearly ones, they are very big, but the quarterly ones, they always kind of say, and maybe they hide. There's just too much stuff going on. There's too much change. Maybe they hide all this stuff, don't talk about it, and it's 15 minutes of how great Spider-Man sold and how they just missed shipping 25 million units this quarter or something like that, right? But they should be saying how many games are in development, and if they don't, I think that's a bad sign. The last time they did this, it was like, we have got 25 games in development, 12 of them, and half of them are live service.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll see. I feel like this then naturally leads into Bungie and what's going on with that team. So this started on Monday, I believe. We started seeing like the news kind of trickle out from employees who were kind of just tweeting like, hey, like I was just laid off from Bungie, and then you see that from one person, and then just like a ripple, just multiple people are just saying the same thing, that they were just like, oh, like I've been at Bungie for this many years, and man, like they laid me off too, and like yeah. So and then obviously, it became official sometime after. We got like a firm number of people who were laid off. It was 100, which was what I think they said 10% of the company, um, something like that.
It was
And
8. They said they laid off 8%, but the number's kind of flaky because there's contractors, and then there's people that were relocated within Sony, and then there's other contractors that didn't get renewed, and other contractors that were contractors for other Sony support studios. But one thing that seems to be apparent is, if you scrape LinkedIn and look, and I was talking to some people this morning about this from LogNet, they're saying it's 100. It's that was Jason's initial reporting. There's multiple rounds of layoffs are probably not done. The number begins with a 1, but they're only saying it's in the hundreds because it's below 200. It's definitely a lot more than 100 people.
damn. But yeah, man. And it feels. I don't know if you guys got this sense too, but in a year that has been awful for developers in terms of just like the number of studios that have laid off people. And Gene, we didn't really touch on the layoffs that Sony is also seeing from whether it's Naughty Dog, uh, Visual Arts Service Groups, Media Molecule laying off like what 15 to 20% of their company. Now Bungie, right? But yeah, what has been an awful year for developers in this industry in terms of being laid off. This one, for whatever reason, feels like the straw that broke the camel's back, because like the Epic one was like particularly like pretty insidious, but like it felt like for whatever reason, the Bungie one was the one that really broke the camel's back because, like, I don't know if you guys got this sense too with Bungie. They felt, at least like the public image was like, oh, we really care about our employees, and we're not like Epic and those other companies that treat their employees like this. And like they were also like really good on the community side. I mean, Macho, you brought up Liana, but like they were really good about bridging that gap between the company and the player base. Like it felt like if you were like a hardcore Destiny player that you knew the community people, right?
Yeah, it's like
So
Final
like
Fantasy 14 or
yeah.
Insomniac Games community, how they drive that. Yeah, it's very similar.
So like it this one really felt like just a betrayal in that sense for a lot of people of like, man, like we really thought you guys were different, but at the end of the day, like no, you guys, when push comes to shove, when you guys need to hit certain numbers, you guys will not hesitate to treat your employees like every other gaming company in this industry will. So yeah, it this one particularly really sucked. And of course the way they went about it is, I dare say, just as insidious as Epic. But yeah, man, Bungie layoffs. Macho, why don't you start things off, man? You saw this. What were you thinking, man?
It's devastating for not just the devs because I mean, I feel like I have a little bit more. I've always had empathy for when this thing happens, but it's like sort of that thing where you see it so many times that you're sort of numb to it. But this year in particular is very stark because of just all layers are happening, not just in the game industry, but across all different companies and including where I worked at, which was very surprising because it had the same sense of we're for our workers, and so we're gonna do what we can to keep people and to not lose jobs, and then end up happening still, and that was just very shocking. And it happened in the exact same way too, where it was just employees didn't know until that morning, or they weren't given the respect of saying goodbye to their coworkers or getting sort of accreditation, like a meeting or anything like that. So again, very different, not insidious, but just very different from what we know Bungie to be from the outside. And I'm not a Bungie like massive fan or wasn't super involved in Destiny community, but you can tell that the people that Destiny love Destiny and they love Bungie. So
Yeah.
to see this sort of happen was heartbreaking, to say the least, and confusing because of when these stories start dropping off, we immediately have like, well, who do we have to blame? Well, it's PlayStation's fault because and Sony's fault because now they own Bungie. Well, it could be a little more complicated than that. Well, now it's Bungie managers and they didn't take a pay cut. Well, maybe they did take a pay cut or they're whatever the case may be. Maybe not getting their vacation time this year. Whatever the case may be. So I feel like it's so hard to like really pin down what's going on because not even the people that are laid off or people on the inside are still working on Bungie don't even know what's happening. And I can say that
And like
from pure experience.
yeah. And like before I pass it on to Eugene, the one thing I'll add is that like if it would it I mean there's been conflicting reports on Sony's involvement in this or lack thereof. And like I just feel like it is strange if they did have like a major role in these layoffs, or if it was solely the responsibility of Bungie management. It just always felt weird to me that, like, remember, like, of the 3.6 billion or whatever that Sony paid to acquire Bungie, they used like 1 billion of that specifically for retention, to keep the people who make Destiny what it is at that company, because they understood that, like, hey, like, we need those people, right? Like, we can't afford to have them leave. So like it just, like, it always felt weird that, like, okay, you're paying all this money specifically to keep these people here, and then, like, this happens. So like it makes me question the Sony, if Sony really did have like a major hand to play in this or not. But
Yeah,
Vane,
that point
oh, go
specifically,
ahead.
before you go on, that point specifically, because I remember that, right? When people were
Yeah.
pointing blame at Sony and be like, oh, it's PlayStation's fault because they're the ones that put the axe down on Bungie. But what happened to the $1 billion they paid for retention? to keep everyone there, keep everyone
Well,
working.
at the same time, there was also like a little blurb in Paul Tassi's reporting that this is why I call it insidious, is because there was this specific thing that they did that I think you had to be at Bungie for a specific number of days or possibly like a year after the acquisition in order to receive that retention bonus or whatever. So what they
Oh
did
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, they fired the people who were like, I don't know, like getting close to that date or whatever,
Had the
so they
shares or
wouldn't receive
whatever.
that money. Right. So they wouldn't receive that money, which is just awful. Just just so awful, man.
Yeah, you want to
Um
talk about fucking people over on savings and future retirement? Yeah, that's you get killed over that stuff.
Which is also just like I don't understand like you and companies do this all the time, especially in this industry which we're learning about, but it's just like you're shooting yourself in the foot in terms of like future recruitment, because like if I sometime down the road even have the idea of wanting to apply to Bungie, why the hell would I apply somewhere that treats their employees like that, who has no qualms about doing that to their employees, and I imagine that several other people who are looking for work are possibly thinking the same thing. um but Gene, man, you saw these layoffs, um possibly like one of the biggest ones of the year. What are you thinking, man?
Yeah, so my immediate reaction seeing what's going on is I've been a part of layoffs fairly regularly throughout my entire life. I've never personally been laid off, but I've seen the chaos. Working in IT at my last couple of jobs, I'm the one like purging the accounts. A lot of my friends leaving the company and catching up with them later. I worked through the 2008 financial crisis at a corporate job in the IT world and the aftermath of that. Um, and one thing I will say is like there is a lot of confusion, a lot of panic that gets lost in the weeds to all of this, right?
Yep.
So one thing the one thing I kept seeing was their healthcare insurance. They only are getting 1 week of healthcare insurance. Bungie's a full remote office, although there's a lot of people in their office, and they have to follow the laws of by person by the state that they reside in, and that is not legal in a lot of states, and there's no way that Bungie is going to have different policies on a per person basis. And in fact, I don't know of anywhere in the United States where it's legal to like just cut off their health insurance like that. And also with the rumor of and I'm not defending what they're doing, I'll get into that in a second, but the rumor of them targeting people that had bonuses coming or had more compensation coming, that isn't entirely true. And in fact, I would go as far as to say it's not true, because we saw people that just started working there get axed, and they said, "Oh, you look at their Twitter timeline. They started at Bungie last year, and they're getting laid off now." There was a lot of people like that, so that is not entirely true. And I do know, being a part of these layoffs, there is mass confusion, there is mass panic, there's a lot of hearsay, and you hear things from a third or fourth source. No Bungie employee has ever gone on social media and said what Paul Tassi said to a T. And I think that he wasn't. I don't think he reported health insurance. I think or let's be specific, medical insurance. I think that he said benefits. So maybe vision, maybe dental, maybe some sort of childcare
Or
thing.
work
All of
perks or
these things are
whatever.
are yeah, right. All of these things are ugly. All of these things are inappropriate. Bungie is financially irresponsible. They have a history of being financially irresponsible. This is why they've been bouncing around from partner to partner to partner, because they just, as soon as they have that money, they're king of the world, and then they go on and do their own thing, and then they need to be bailed out again. This is the third or fourth time that Bungie's been bailed out. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's very clear to me that they have no accounting system in place to keep the game afloat like a traditional video game studio. And in the sense that I mean that they need to make live service games. They need to have regular revenue coming in, because whether it's just not enough money in the bank or whether they spend too much money, I don't know. But it's like IOI made Hitman, right? So Hitman comes out, and Hitman's great, and they sold that game for probably $40 on average, and they're not going to make another game for 5 years. They're going to have just a very, very minor amount of residuals, or how many copies of Hitman do you think they're selling this year? And like, it's not going to be enough to fund 500 people working on their next game, right? So they have responsible people in the production and finance pipeline plan all these things out and scope all this stuff out. It just feels like Bungie doesn't have those people working there, and they've never had those people working there. And if the money stops coming in, they don't know what to do. And a sign of that is they hired 400 people in the last year. I think it was over 400 people. Somewhere between 400 to 500. I went back and looked at all the stuff. 400 to 500 people they've added in the past year. And there are still jobs posted on their job board. There were still jobs posted on their job board when they had the layoffs. So like, it's very clear to me that they're financially irresponsible and they don't know how to budget and do long-term planning. I think there's way too many people that are working there for a game that may go, like, let's say they kill off Destiny tomorrow, which they're obviously not going to do that. They're going to have two or three more years of income from Destiny, and then they're going to have Marathon overlap with that. But like, let's just say the last two Destiny expansions failed and no one liked them, and they needed to pivot to Destiny 3 or straight to Marathon. They could not survive, and they think they talk about this, or ownership talks about this. They could not survive without income. They couldn't survive. They talk about not being able to survive, missing that 45% of their projections, and that goes back to those tough conversations that were happening in June when budgets were due internally with companies, and people are looking at forecasting revenue streams, and they just totally missed the mark because they continued spending. And you can tell, like, they had those rough conversations in July because you have 30 or 45 days of having conversations internally going, how do we get ourselves out of this mess? And then you have 30 to 45 days of conversations of, how do we fix this? And that takes us to the last week of October, where they lay off 100 to 200 people.
Yeah. And then like to like you saying that they had to hire, you know, or they hired 400 something people. Let's also not forget that they have like multiple things in the oven on top of Destiny, which I think it's pretty safe to say that it's kind of been on the decline, just in terms of like player interest. It definitely feels like it's been waning as of late. So you have that, and then Marathon obviously like waiting in the wings, but then like they also had Matter, that they were working on, and then they also had another project as well, an unannounced project. But it's just like, so potentially four projects, but let's say definitively they had three big projects. I don't know what Matter would have been, but like between Marathon and Destiny, which are going to be two live service games, like I don't see how like you keep two live service games running simultaneously, you know. So like again, it makes, to me at least, it makes sense that you would need a ton of people just to, first of all, to make those games, but then to like keep those games running for a long time. But it's just like, that just cannot be, like, financially, that just cannot be, like, that would sink most companies to even attempt something like that. So like I just don't see, with like as many things that they had in the oven, I don't know how like they ever thought this was going to go well for them.
Yeah, and maybe Marathon is a small passion project by a smaller internal team, and the reason why it got delayed isn't because of this Tarkov stuff that may or may not be true. The reason why it got delayed is because it can't overlap with Destiny. Maybe its sole purpose is to fill a gap between Destiny 2 and Destiny 3. Like, it could be something like that too. And I'll just add on that to what you were saying, like the layoffs and how things are going in video games is endemic. Like, while we're going through a quote unquote recession, like a fake recession right now in our country, and there's economic problems globally right now coming, like how we're pivoting out of our transition out of the pandemic. Um, they've got to, like, the video game industry has to figure this out, and I think that those are the conversations they need to be having at GDC, and maybe not like how to like have better ray tracing. Is how can we have development pipelines like a Remedy, where, okay, you have not almost like seasonal or contract work, but you have to redesign your pipelines so that you're not laying people off all the time. And the video game industry isn't this revolving door around layoffs. And companies at the highest levels, the AAA levels, have to commit to those things, right? So if you're, and I don't know what it is, but like they have to put every little thing under a magnifying glass. And if you're a conceptual art person and you just do conceptual art, okay, so you're going to do conceptual art for a game that's going to be in development for 5 years. So what are you doing until the next game's ready? They're not going to call you until year 3 or 4 to conceptualize the next game. So what are you doing? And I think that like they have to look at these roles as being dynamic, and they have to look at these people as being like part of the company because they're going to wear so many hats. And I think conceptual artists need to follow a game through to QA. Project managers need to follow games from the time that they're conceptualized to after there's patches and things like that. Like
100%.
these people need to find ways to work on these games throughout their lifetime, and they need to come up with development pipelines and workflows. I think we're at the point where the traditional corporate job description and job titles, it's not going to work in the video game industry, because if it's going to take 5 years to make a game, if it's going to take 3 years to make a game, and your job is to design the shadows on the trash cans, like you're going to work for 6 months and that's going to be it. And this is what's been going on in the industry for a long time. And it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I just think that everyone, like, they have to take a totally different approach, and the whole entire way games are made has to go under a magnifying glass right now, and it needs to be evaluated by third parties. And the AAA industry needs to make a commitment to revisiting how these games are made.
Why? Let me ask you, why do you think this is happening, and why is it happening all together, like in 2023 specifically? Because like I also think it's kind of sad that like this is happening to these big AAA studios where you think they would offer like the most security. Like I remember like when Microsoft they acquired like all these studios, and Double Fine being one of them, and then earlier this year when the 10,000 layoffs happened, like Double Fine was one of the companies that were hit with layoffs as a result of that. Obviously like 343 and the Coalition, I think Undead Labs as well, but Bethesda got hit with layoffs. But it's like with acquisitions, you're like one of the most alluring things about it is like the idea of security. And then it's like, these big companies, they don't have an issue. Well, these big companies are going to be hit with these layoffs as well. But then like the sad thing to me is that like on the flip side, you have these brand new studios who are independent, and it almost feels like sometimes they are like exempt from this conversation because we hardly, if ever, see them get affected by layoffs as much as like the big AAAs. But then it's like you see Striking Distance Studios, they release what was the name of the game, the Dead Space like game that they released last year?
Callisto Protocol.
Right. They released that game. Obviously, it didn't sell well. It didn't do well critically, and then they're hit with layoffs. What, like a few months later? Uh, the game this year, Immortal of Avion or what,
Yep.
whatever. Like, right, brand new studio, their first game, basically same story as Callisto Protocol. Doesn't do well commercially or critically, and then they're hit with layoffs. Deviation, they didn't even get to the point that they released their game, but like just they're hit with mass layoffs, and they're a brand new studio, right? So it's like it's crazy that like, and I'll ask you again, why do you think this is happening all in this year so frequently, but also to big AAA studios as well as brand new studios who are just coming like into the industry?
Well, this has been going on for 10 or 20 years now at this point, where and you can read about it in Jason's books, but a game, there's 300 people working on a game. It's all hands on deck. Everyone's pitching in to get it to the finish line. The game releases, and it's like, okay, everyone takes a little vacation time, and it's like, oh, now what do we do? Well, the people that were getting the game out the door are now have to go, and this happened at Double Fine. The people who were working day and night tirelessly to get the game out at the door now need to go back and conceptualize the next game and plan the next game. Well, then there's a bunch of developers that are sitting around their hands in their pockets wondering what's next. So when you have a development pipeline like that, and we saw it in the Double Fine documentary, and they're able to mitigate it by having a second VR game that they were working on, and eventually they pivoted people to the Psychonauts 2, but they had layoffs as well. as part of that in different phases.
And
And
really quickly, the same thing happened with Santa Monica back in 2013, 2014 when the 2014 space game that they were working on got canceled. So there was like a bunch of people while Corey had like a small incubation team working on God of War 2018, the majority of the studio was left with nothing to do after that project was canceled. So like they were left without nothing to do for like a few weeks or whatever before they had to move all those people to Corey's team.
yeah, and there are things that you can do in a creative standpoint. Maybe they, and I think this is what's going on with the remakes and the remasters with Sony. So that's why I don't get so upset about The Last of Us 2 getting remade, The Last of Us 1 getting remade. The people at Sony Bend who were going to get laid off after Days Gone came out, and they went through their turmoil. Now it's been 5 years since Days Gone came out. They're probably 5 years away from having another game come out. All of those people went and assisted Naughty Dog, and people are like, "Oh, Ben's going to be Naughty Dog North, and Ben should be working on Days Gone 2. They shouldn't be working on The Last of Us Part 1 remake. What a waste of their talent." Well, that's true if you have the conceptual people, the design people, the engineering people making the next game. Those game developers and designers that work on the game, design, like actually putting the data and the levels together outside after it's been put on paper. You can then it gave them something to do, and I think that's great. And like that's a creative approach, and those are things that we should be taking into account and thinking about. But in terms of why there's layoffs right now, I've said it 3 times now. Like something happened with the United States economy this summer where everyone in the financial industry was like, it's going to be bad. And you had people that are experts in the industry saying it's going to be 2008 all over again. And so that's component A. Component B is it's been an amazing year for video games. It's been an amazing year for really long video games, and you're seeing other teams suffer. We're about to find out that Alan Wake 2 did not sell well. I'm telling you, I'm sure that game's going to be great, but we're about to find out that didn't sell well. It wasn't on store shelves. There wasn't a ton of marketing for it in terms of TV ads and things like that. They're basically an indie studio at this point, with or double A studio with although they make unbelievable AAA games, I'm sure, but there's 200 people there, and they're not doing this with a big publishing partner like Rockstar or Xbox. It's a little different. They're doing this on their own. So that's two, is that this has been a crazy year where casual fans are playing 1 or 2 games. They've already played their 1 or 2 games, and they're not going to buy other things because those 1 or 2 games are long. And that's really what impacted Destiny, I think, for the most part. So you have the economic factors, and then you have just a crazy year factor. And I would say that this has been going on in the video game industry forever. It's nothing new. But why it's been so bad are those 2 elements. But like, let's look at like a studio like Double Fine, right? Let's look at Double Fine 2018. Everyone goes into your little office in San Francisco, and it's an art house, and everyone's having fun, and everyone's a jolly time. Then the fucking pandemic comes, and a million people in America die, and San Francisco's got fires that these people can't go to their homes anymore, and they're working all remotely, and there's this huge pivot, and they lose probably 2 years of game development time, and they can't let anybody go because it's the pandemic, and they're getting government PPE, and they're taking out all these loans. And it's just this really expensive shift. I mean, 2 years of full-blown development time they probably lost in that game. And what happened to them happened to every studio on the planet, especially in San Francisco and California, where like Call of Duty's made, God of War's made, Horizon's made. On that coastline area there, visual arts, those people for almost a summer could not go to their homes because of those fires. And it's just a terrible situation all around. So you have this pivot, right? And now you have these new costs. Then you have to buy 200 Slack licenses, and that's $50 a user a month. And you got to buy 200 Zoom licenses, and that's $50 at 200 users a month. So your IT costs are now like quadrupled, and you're spending money. And now there's when you come out of it and things start to return to normal and people are going back into the office and just you don't have these costs of the fires and the craziness going on and people taking time off for funerals because grandma died. Not that that's a joke, but that's like really what's going on and what happened in 2020, 2021. You have people, you have it kind of the reverse buttons getting hit, but inflation is so bad that people are just spending. Then all of a sudden, this past June, boom, the brakes hit, and all that spending is not happening anymore. It can't happen anymore. And if you keep spending like this, we're going to close the studio. We're going to run out of business. And that is what's going on across the industry. So it's a combination of like, this has always been going on and it has to be fixed. And the pivot from the transition out of the pandemic.
Do you think we're still kind of like we haven't felt the worst of the pandemic in terms of like game production wise? Because I'd imagine like the reason why like and we give Sony props all the time for like the PS5 launch that they had and then the following 2 years of like following that up with games like Returnal and Ratchet and Forbidden West and Ragnarok and now Spider-Man 2, but it's like were those games already close enough to the finish line that they weren't too impacted by the pandemic? And now it's not going to be until 2024, 2025, until like when a lot of these games start like probably pre-production in like let's say 2020 that now it feels like the development of those new games that were just starting around the pandemic that we're not going to feel the real consequences of that until like 2024 2025 or are we already past that?
Well, I think that no, I think this is going to go on for another year or so. And you're I know this is true. I know this is the case because who's not struggling? The indies are not struggling because they've been remote and home the entire time. It wasn't a big transition to them. And at the time where socially and economically we're at our worst, like the creatives strive in times of distress and struggle. Creatives really strive, and we're getting some really great indie games. Double A's, they're screwed. They're in trouble. Look at Embracer, the factory of double A's. Like their costs are going up to where like you need to figure out who you are. And I think people just fall in the double A space by accident. And some people that are in the space now may have to go down to that indie level or just close their doors. And then you see the AAA places where they're like, we don't care. We're shoving this game out the door. We delayed it a year. We delayed it 2 years. We're shoving it out the door. Spider-Man's not going to have the side missions you want. Starfield's going to be Fallout 4 in space. Sorry about it. It's been 5 years. Get it out the door.
Yeah. I also kind of feel that that's like probably a big reason as to why like just a lot of Sony's first party games are just not at a point where they're ready to show. When I was really thinking that this would have been the year that we would finally see a lot of those games, but yeah, it turns out that they needed like a whole other year to get themselves ready. So
And we talked about 2024 is not looking too great either.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the floodgates open at 2025. You know, I trust Insomniac and Sony. Sony will work things around in a window, and they'll give people extra time so the stuff's not butting up against each other. But one of these live service games has to come out in 2025, if not 2 or 3 of them. Wolverine was always slated for 2025. Wolverine's a real possibility for 2025. Ghost of Tsushima, I can't believe is not coming out next year. So that's probably, a possibility for 2025. Like, I think the floodgates are opened. I think Sony's gonna have a crazy second half of the year. And then you have The Last of Us 2 remake on a PS5 Pro in 2024, 2025 for sure, that would line up with the release of the show. So they're going to have a crazy 2025, 2026, 2027. Maybe you see them move games into the PS6 for 2028, 2029. But the second half of this console generation is going to be good. Like Sony started out with a bang. It's going to be a lull in the middle. They're going to end with a bang.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's gonna be the case. So like, do you agree with like do you think the answer then is more first party studios then to kind of offset that lull, those lull periods, or would you much prefer them offset those periods with third party exclusives like they've pretty much kind of been doing, or would you rather, I guess, the Xbox strategy where they are acquiring first parties to get games out on a more frequent basis? Because the thing I always see on Reset Era is that that Sony can't they can't do one big first party PlayStation Studios title a year again. Like the year that they just had in 2023, and like I know they had things like Firewall and Horizon DLC and Call of the Mountain, but it's like they obviously can't have another year like 2023 with just one big PlayStation Studios release, right? So do you solve that by acquiring more studios? What do you think?
Well, Jim Ryan said before he left, Jim Ryan said they want to do 2 big games a year. And I would say that Helldivers at $39.99, I think it is, and then like $49.99 for the extra edition. Helldivers is not a big game,
Yeah.
but yet Final Fantasy 15 is one of the big games he's talking about. And even though that's not first party. Meanwhile, this is prior to the Activision deal closing, but after the Activision deal opened, Microsoft is very adamant about 4 big games a year,
Yeah.
and then they would have a handful of ancillary things in there. You have to combat what Microsoft has in Diablo and Elder Scrolls and Starfield and Fallout. You have to combat that. You need to have a Western RPG that's not Horizon. You can have Horizon, that's great. You need to have something else. You need one more big RPG, especially if Destiny's not going to go, Destiny Marathon, if they're not going to go console exclusive. And I think that Sony should reconsider that. You need to go and you need to get somebody else that's going to make a Western RPG. They are incredibly weak in the shooter space. Halo has Gears of War. Microsoft has Halo, Gears of War, Call of Duty. They have Battlefield coming, that comes to Game Pass after it expires. They have Doom,
And
Wolfenstein. That you have to have. You cannot go this long without a shooter. And Sony, old Sony, said, we're friends with Activision. They give us the Destiny deal. We're friends with Activision. They give us the Call of Duty deal. We shouldn't be making a shooter. And in fact, I think, the rumor was always the Corey's RPG's sci-fi game. Not Corey's, but the Santa Monica one. The rumor was always that was canceled because it was too much like Destiny. Well, now you have to kind of figure out you need to have a shooter. You have to have a shooter, and I think they're too weak in the RPG space. You're going to get crushed when Elder Scrolls comes out. I think that they survived a bad blow when Starfield came out, and it wasn't a big deal, and people, there was a spike in increase in Xbox sales, but it wasn't like you didn't feel it reverberate through Sony. And I don't think they're going to get away with this much longer as it starts to build up with Diablo and the next Diablo and Elder Scrolls 6 and the next Fallout. Like you gotta do something in that space. That's not just
they got an easy
Horizon.
way out with Baldur's Gate 3 coming out when it did.
Yeah, and the strategy, I like the strategy of the external third party stuff, like love the Final Fantasy stuff, and I think economically it makes sense instead of paying Ueda to make the Last Guardian for 10 years to just go find someone making the Last Guardian in terms of like the Stray and get that and pay for that and don't take on all that risk. Like, okay, I get it. It makes sense. That's digestible. But what happens when the well's dry and it doesn't make sense to put your game exclusively on PlayStation because Xbox is going to give you money too to not do that, and maybe you're going to lose out on PC sales. What if it gets to a point where it doesn't make sense to do that? It's really worked out for Sony because they're like outselling Xbox 3-1 in consoles, but if Xbox gains ground, even gains half the ground, it's going to get to a point where it stops making sense for even Square Enix to go exclusive to PlayStation. It's not a big deal because Sony just needs to offset the cost of the 10 copies they're going to sell on Xbox of Final Fantasy 15. Now, but what happens when that's 5 million?
Yeah. 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 It definitely feels like I don't know, like it's definitely been a slow burn for Xbox, but and obviously console hasn't been the focus for them for a long time, but it definitely feels like and I don't know if they'll ever make ground on console sales, but it feels like they are making some progress on their whole unified ecosystem thing where all we care about is, just players, that specific metric of like you play our things through the cloud on your phones, on your PC or the Xbox console, and I feel like Sony, whether we like it or not, maybe have gotten to that party a little too late.
Well, Microsoft hasn't figured it out, and one day they're going to wake up and say you need, you realize you need a cached component of the game. The input lag on streaming sucks. I'm behind the PlayStation Portal. We'll all write about it. I'm sure you guys have streamed games in some capacity before. People complain about frame rates. They're going to complain about the input lag. Like that is so worse. Input lag is so worse than frame rate dropping and frame rate pricing issues, and it's going to turn the casual gamer off because you can feel the input lag when you play. It just feels off. It feels weird. And whether it's Sony, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Nintendo, somebody's going to wake up one morning and go, "Oh wow, we need to cache like a crumb of this game so that it's played locally here." But like the next screen and the next pixel and the next frame is streamed in through the internet, and like that is the answer. Like that's whoever wakes up and has that light bulb first is going to get there. So I think Sony's just as close as Microsoft is. Microsoft's been doing this time and they haven't figured that out, and like they're too proud and too ignorant. It's kind of like Microsoft Teams is like the ugliest chatting service tool in the world, and like they're just too ignorant to make a change. I don't think that they're going to pivot from. They think they're just going to keep building this like high end infrastructure as opposed to taking smarter approaches.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, man, we will see, man. I definitely do think that like but again, this kind of goes back to the deviation thing that like it's like we knew about the Activision acquisition, so it felt like the pivot to live service was kind of came at like a good time because it's like, well, if Microsoft does make these games exclusive, like a major cash cow like Call of Duty, well then it's like you supplement that potential loss with something of your own. So that's why they got a Deviation Games, and they got like Concord with Firewalk and stuff like that. So it's like the Concord is coming out at a good time, I feel like, but also at the same time it's like maybe a year too late, right? So I don't know, man.
Yep.
Especially with Destiny declining as it is. Um, yeah, but that's gonna do it for the Bungie layoffs and I guess the Connie Booth situation as well. Want to wrap up the podcast with our last topic being um just some rumblings that there may be something God of War Ragnarok related being revealed at the Game Awards, specifically a DLC/expansion in the vein of The Lost Legacy and Miles Morales. That's pretty much all that we know. There's some vague things going around by this God of War leaker, but but other than that, I just wanted to kind of like go around the panel here. What if this thing, like from a potential God of War Ragnarok Miles Morales like expansion, what characters would you guys like to see this focus on? Um, or would you still want this to be Kratos? Would you want it to go back to Greece at some point in his life, or you want it to take place after Ragnarok, or someplace during the Ragnarok story? Like, I'm curious, like, if this thing is real potentially, like, what is your dream scenario for what this game looks like?
I'll start it off. Freya.
Mhm. Okay.
Maybe it's like Freya DLC. No, actually, what I think of Freya DLC would be really, really cool. And as far as like giving a little bit more context and background, maybe like as a prologue DLC or something on her life, with Odin and stuff like that. But I think actually having a Faye DLC and having her be a playable character and filling
Oh, that'd
those
be cool.
yeah, filling those gaps of what Kratos was uncovering in like the post game stuff. So a bit of a spoiler for God of War Ragnarok. We find out what happens with Faye and what the events that occur between her and Thor, as well as like that whole post game content that you can just delve into. There's so much there to just chew on that had me and Walt foaming at the mouth talking about this stuff when we finished the game and got the platinum trophy, that it can absolutely set up something really cool as like a DLC, including her, and again filling those gaps of what Ragnarok was setting up for, rather than it being like, oh, here's Kratos uncovering some clues about Egyptian gods, and that's where we're going to next. That feels a little too far fetched for me. If anything, Ragnarok would be more of a story closer to what we already have, rather than another setup.
Nice, nice. Gene, what about you, man? What do you personally want from this thing?
I pie in the sky. I know it's not going to happen, but what would get me like excited? It's going to take a lot for me to get excited to go back to God of War. So I hope it is a full standalone thing and not just like got to reinstall the game and it's DLC. But I think it would be cool to, let's say the next part of the series is he's going to go back into the Greek mythology, right? It would be cool if like this was that transitionary game, like almost like how Spider-Man introduces the gameplay of Miles and being as Miles and playing and having two Spider-Men in the universe. Like, let's start down that path now with the introductory game and have Kratos get like sent back to Greece or those Greek god times. What are we calling that mythology? Is it Greek?
Yeah, just the Greek the Greek era.
Yeah, the
Okay,
Olympians or whatever, the Olympus era, whatever. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if there was a time frame or if it's Roman mythology, whatever. So you send them back in time, and it's either God of War 1, 2, or 3. Those levels, those areas, those enemies played through in the modern camera view and gameplay
Sick.
style.
Yeah, that'd be really, really cool. Especially with the axe, like doing it with the axe instead. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be pretty damn cool. Um, yeah, and I feel like that would have like some pretty cool like narrative moments of just like, cause it's like literally him like going through his past, but like in a more like
Ugh.
physical way, like him actually being there, So like, and like also too, see now you have me believing in this because like you can also do like how has Olympus like healed in the time since he like literally destroyed that part of the world at the end of God of War 3? Like, has it changed at all? Has it gotten any better since he's been gone? So. Yeah, there's a lot that they can do with that. That's definitely pie in the sky, but I would love that for sure.
It
Yeah, I
starts
just
around
think
with
like,
him.
why would he care about that when like his when Atreus, he has Atreus to worry about, But
But Trace is gone.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. It makes a good point. So that would be cool too.
It starts out with him teasing the snake. The snake eats him. But then there's like venom in the snake, and he falls asleep in the snake, and he has this dream. And then after playing this game for like 5, 8 hours, whatever, right? The snake spits you out, and you realize you were dreaming.
Goddamn.
Like, damn,
See
I
now
never
I'm
got
into
those grapes. Never got those grapes
it.
from
Now I'm
Aphrodite.
into it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would want, but I do think it would be cool if it was a transitionary game into whatever the next big God of War game is. So like let's say the next saga, because we're done with the Norse saga. So like let's say that the next one is gonna take place in Egypt or whatever. It would be cool if like Kratos and Freya are like sailing to Egypt, but like they stop, like I don't know, they get stopped at or shipwrecked at like an island in between the two locations or whatever, and I don't know, they deal with some kind of I don't know, no name god or some issue that brought them to shore. They have to deal with that, blah blah blah, whatever. I don't know. I think it would be cool though if it was a transitionary kind of game between Ragnarok and the next big title. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, and if you do something like that, the next game just starts out with you being there in the Greek mythology, whereas this game can explain and get in the nuance, and you don't have to start about worry about like beginning the game on some silly narrative journey.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but apparently we won't have to, if this is to be believed, we won't have to wait too long to see it revealed because apparently it's gonna happen at the Game Awards.
Which is
Um,
exciting. It's gonna be a great awards, man. I'm so excited to
which
watch all
which
the turmoil.
which leads us to our final little my final little question to you guys is what do you guys think? Because we should be Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we get it this week, but we should be getting Jeff Keighley's Game of the Year nominations pretty shortly. So obviously 6 games. Macho, we did this last week, but I want to see if anything's changed for you because something has definitely changed for me. Um, but yeah, just want to go through each of us. Like, what do we think are gonna be like the 6 games that are gonna be nominated there? Because so I also like not to beat this dead horse, but Gene, last week I was speaking the point as to why I don't see Starfield being among that 6 like whatsoever. Like
You know,
I
I've started to come to that realization. And I almost do kind of think that Xbox is going to have some representation in the Game of the Year awards category with Starfield, but now that Alan Wake 2 has come out and has this reception, I think it just got knocked off. And I'm talking to the guys at LogNet, kind of get an idea of how they feel, and they're minus one or two people. They're mostly Xbox centric, and not one of them is saying that they would vote for Starfield in Game of the Year.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Not
But yeah, I
surprised.
mean,
It's a like-minded good group sense of people right there.
There's a different group now, and
Shout out
it's
to
everyone's
LogNet.
very unique in their own ways.
Yeah.
I really do like the group. It's a great group, but
Yeah,
yeah, that
you
was a
guys have a lot
problem
of great
before.
diverse opinions on there. I've seen the articles that
We,
pumped out. It's really good stuff.
so 2020, I think it was Doom Eternal. I could be wrong here. I'm trying to remember. Doom Eternal, The Last of Us, and Xbox didn't have anything out. There was a couple of other games. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Was Ghost of
And the
Tsushima one of
vote,
them?
maybe the vote was very spread out, and The Last of Us 2 was like just barely winning.
I think
So
Final
the
Fantasy VII
Xbox,
Remake was also in there as well.
yeah, maybe the Xbox guys, we have a spreadsheet of like with the names of where you could vote. The Xbox guys took their names off of whatever it was they voted for and voted for Doom so that The Last of Us wouldn't win.
oh yeah, I feel like I remember that.
Yeah.
I also remember I think Microsoft Flight Simulator won like best graphics or whatever, and I was like, all right.
Hmm.
So that game's amazing.
It
I'll
is.
give that game a 10 out of 10. That game is unbelievable.
It is, but at the same time, like you had Last of Us Part Two on released in the same year. Come on now.
But
But
to your point, so I just looked it up. The when we actually learned of the 2022 Game Award nominees was November 14th. So yeah,
okay,
we're right on the cusp of finding out what these nominees are going to be.
right. Yeah, and I remember obviously God of War Ragnarok came out on the 9th last year. So yeah, the announcement came out like yeah, just a little bit after that game. Um, yeah, so I'm still and Machi, you gotta give me some credit for this one because I said last podcast that I don't know what it is, but I feel it in my bones, all right, that Alan Wake 2 is gonna get a 90 on Metacritic. It almost got there, but I don't know what it is about it, but I just felt like that game was gonna be the way that people were talking about it. It felt like it was an early like game of the year candidate. And yeah, it's kind of been confirmed now that the game's been out. But yeah, I'm definitely expecting Zelda, Mario Wonder, Spider-Man 2, Baldur's Gate 3, and Alan Wake 2. That 6 game, it really feels like it's up for grabs. It could be Final Fantasy,
Wait,
could be
but are
Street
those the
Fighter.
six? Are those 6 games you just listed? I didn't count.
No, those are 5. Those are 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah, so like it could be Resident Evil 4. I think if there's an Xbox game nominated for Game of the Year for the big award, it's gonna be Hi-Fi Rush and not Starfield.
So
But yeah, what about you guys? You guys, I mean, obviously, Macho, you said you would love to see Liza P in there, but how are you feeling?
yeah, I'm still in that realm. I mean, as someone that's the Final Fantasy fanatic here, we had to say Final Fantasy 16 just because it does have those crazy highs that feels like it does something no other AAA game really has done, other than God of War, right? As far as like what it does for boss fights and just for set pieces. So I think that's a real strong chance, just because of the fact that it does have the big wow factor, even though this kind of died off since its release. But I 100% seeing what the games that you said absolutely just making the cut, and my vote for it would be anything Final Fantasy 16, Hi-Fi Rush, Liza P for, and Liza P really is kind of sitting at the top for me right now as far as what it does. It's incredible. Um, I'm trying to think of the other stuff. Yeah, I mean those are the ones that specifically come to mind. Now I'm thinking about it. So either way, I don't think it's gonna be Starfield. I can just say I can just say that the what that game has sort of became that games came and went and made big sales and had a really big presence just about everywhere, but the consensus is the same, is that it's feels archaic and it feels old. And I'm even getting the sense of people that I work with that have played Starfield. I ask them how it is now, and they say, "Oh, I haven't finished the game. I'm kind of dropped off on it because it feels too old. It's not super engaging."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know the game that just appeared on screen right now, Street Fighter 6. I know that's a completely long shot. That's a Hail Mary that's not gonna get caught as far as a Game of the Year nominee, but I will hope that'll at least be in people's consideration, uh, considering what it did this year and what it is like a fighting game for people first getting into a fighting game. That one, what it does to teach you the fundamentals of a fighting game, is really innovative and um just intuitive. Intuitive. It's really good stuff, and on top of just being beautiful, great art direction, great characters, awesome music. So yeah, um, and there's a number of games that could make that sixth spot, but I'll say the top spot for me either be Final Fantasy 16 or Liza P.
What about you, Gene? What do you think is the 6 games that are gonna be nominated for like the ultimate Game of the Year award?
And this may be different than my opinion, but what I think the last 6 games are going to be are Baldur's Gate 3, Zelda, Mario, Starfield, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake. I think
Interesting.
the Xbox centric votes, because there will be people voting that just play Xbox, there will be people voting that just play PlayStation. Maybe they will be required to play all these games. But Xbox centric outlets will be voting, and PlayStation centric outlets will be voting. I think and Nintendo ones as well. I think the Nintendo vote splits, and I think the Xbox votes split. Starfield, Hi-Fi Rush, in a lot of categories. Starfield and Forza. If you're an Xbox centric site, you're probably splitting some votes when you're submitting your votes for Game of the Year, not necessarily voting on what will be Game of the Year from the conclusion, but like when you're nominating a game. I think people are going to split Hi-Fi Rush, Starfield, and Forza. I think Baldur's Gate has already won,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I hate to break.
the hype for the hype for that game is insane. It's just
Yeah,
across all different kinds of mediums and people that are just not into games hearing about it.
yeah, and it just does things that I want modern games to do, in the sense of like, don't sell me a longer, better looking version of an action adventure game from last generation. Like, let's do some new stuff. Like, let's do things that people aren't doing, and like give me something fresh and unique. And I think that is the only game in the list that does that. I mean, Zelda is Tears of the Kingdom is Breath of the Wild over again. Mario Wonder, it does a lot of really cool, unique things, and I think that's what gets it there. But the fact that it's a 2D Mario game and not a 3D Mario game, it's going to hold it back. And I haven't played Alan Wake 2. I haven't played Octopath Traveler 2. I still have to play that. Um, I'm going to start playing WrestleQuest. I'm going to start playing Sea of Stars. It is likely one of those two will be my indie game of the year. And I've played Street Fighter 6 and Mortal Kombat 1, and Mortal Kombat 1 is my favorite fighting game this year. I'm sorry.
Man, I can see why it's super fun, but playing that, I was just like, geez, there's so much missing here that just makes it look like It's all skin and bones compared to Street Fighter 6.
Music, I think Hi-Fi Rush, I would not necessarily for score or sound design or sound effects, but soundtrack or music, I would vote for Hi-Fi Rush. I mean, putting Nine Inch Nails in your game is a cheat code. You win for me. That's about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I hope for
leaning
Hi-Fi Rush, man. It's such a gem. Like that, what a way to kick off the year and to really foreshadow the amazing games that we're gonna get for the rest of the year. Just that experience alone was just so much fun. And for $30 at most, that was like what a steal.
Were you guys ever into pro wrestling when you were kids?
No.
Oh, okay. There's a game called WrestleQuest. I liked pro wrestling when I was a little kid. I watched it all the time, like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, stuff like that. There is a game called WrestleQuest that is basically like Chrono Trigger that takes place in professional wrestling. So like you're a professional wrestler that is like learning how to do moves and learning how to have a persona and be a character. And you go on this RPG with your other wrestling tag team partners. It is just off the wall crazy.
I mean,
Nice.
one other game that I want to say that some people are forgetting now, but was a big deal when it released was Hogwarts Legacy.
Mm.
And I know you and I have our reservation about Hogwarts Legacy, about its structure as a game and certain game design elements being sort of samey or even Ubisoft-esque. But what that game did as far as atmosphere and world building was unlike anything we've ever seen for that franchise, and it did that in spades on top of having created a character that worked.
Yeah.
So I and the different kind of ways you can make your character look like you, like it was the first time I could actually have a freaking curly hair Hispanic in a Harry Potter game. like it's stuff like that I think that it's worthy of a nomination. But yeah, it's among
Did you play
a lot
Starfield?
of other great games.
Macho, did you play Starfield?
I have not, no.
I wonder if people think Hogwarts is better than Starfield. I hate Harry Potter. I'm not a Harry Potter person. I've never watched a movie. I've never read a book. I don't really care. Was not on my radar. And I'm so glad all these other RPGs came out because like now it's like not even a conversation. It's not even the best RPG to come out this year. But I wonder what if people believe that that is genuinely better than Starfield, and they're not worried about, I don't know, backlash or perception or whatever when it comes to voting game of the year. Does Starfield come out, Mario, Zelda, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man, Alan Wake 2 stay? That would be really interesting. I think Xbox gets a seat at the table no matter what somehow. But that would be quite something if Starfield got booted out by Hogwarts.
And I see it happening because of what you just said of it breaking those barriers, the same way Baldur's Gate 3 is breaking those barriers. Where I've learned when Hogwarts Legacy come out, I've learned for the first time how many people are not into Harry Potter. And I grew up with this stuff, right? I went to school with people that read the books, like I watched the movies. It was always an event for Harry Potter, just for myself and with friends and just a group of other people that read the books. And then now the game's coming out, now everyone's like, oh, I don't like Harry. I never read the books. I never saw the movie. It's too kid, blah blah blah. And then I'm just like, what? Like, when did this start happening? And it started making those people play the game. And on top of that, I get a text from my cousin who's not a gamer. She's like dabbles in every now and then, but barely. She probably still rocks a PS3, and she's playing Hogwarts Legacy. So
Yeah.
I think there's an argument for Hogwarts Legacy as a Game of the Year nominee for sure.
Maybe. But we will find out on December 6th, December 8th, something like that. We'll find out soon enough, man. It's gonna be close to a little over a month until the show proper, so I'm excited for what gets revealed because I don't know, man. I also feel like Sony they need to like I mean
Also.
this is what I mean by me being frustrated, man, because it's like, but like also if we want to look at it seriously, they need to talk about Concord if it is actually coming out next year. So like I feel like it's smart to reintroduce that game with like a gameplay trailer at the Game Awards. That's just me, but but and obviously we'll definitely see Death Stranding 2 there.
He's drumming it
Um,
up, man.
Yeah, so Sony could take back the narrative by showing Concord, and it looks amazing. And honestly, you said Death Stranding, that wasn't even the first thing that came to my mind, and it really should be. Like for sure, that's going to be there. The first thing that comes to my mind is Ghost of Tsushima 2. Like it,
mm,
next year is going to be 4 years, and really got delayed due to the pandemic. So and they moved it around The Last of Us 2. So they've probably been done with Ghost of Tsushima for 5 years.
yeah.
Like it's like they're ready to show that game what is going on. Like that's at the top of my mind. So Sony could be like, oh, here's Twisted Metal, here's Ghost of Tsushima, here's Death Stranding 2, and here's Concord.
And
But
you know,
I don't think we see any of the live service games. I think all that stuff is 2025.
and you know what's funny about that, Gene, too, is that we didn't even mention their XDev projects too. So Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, which was supposed to come out this year, and we have not heard
Yeah.
a word about that game. But like those
Mhm.
two games are just like up in the ether, which we need to get updates about soon. Lost Soul Aside, right? That's now a Sony Interactive Entertainment published game. So we need to hear about that again at some point, right? So like th- my thing about 2024, and we can end after this, is that 2024 is going to be another light year, but in terms of like announcements, 2024 has to, and it's also shaping up to be the year that like the floodgates open in terms of like us finally knowing what Blue Point's working on, what well, not Media Molecule, but like what London Studios working on, what Naughty Dog's working on, Santa Monica, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like next year has to be that year where we get all of these answers to all these questions we have.
And I think we're gonna find out how much trouble they're in here next week. And of the partner games you're talking about on that Japanese centric state of play where they had what's the game, Stellar Blade, right? I'm really looking forward to Stellar Blade too. They showed a game called Sin Duality. I played it at Tokyo Game Show.
Oh, cool.
It sucks. It sucks. It is so bad. It
Wait,
sucks.
was it the Capcom one or like was it the Chinese one of the Chinese Hero Project games that they partnered up with?
I don't know for sure, but it's the one with the girl and the robot. And the trailer looks all futuristic, and there's this hot emo looking Japanese looking girl, anime looking girl, and she gets in the Big Mac. The one with the girl in the Mac.
Um,
Sin Duality.
Oh, I
yeah.
remember you talking. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Jeez, wow.
It sucks. And it was
Oh,
shown with that original batch of Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin. I'm telling you
yeah.
guys, I
It's
played it. It's
a Bandai Namco game. Gotcha.
yes. And
Okay.
I believe it's PlayStation console exclusive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
wow, I do remember that. Yeah, that was a weird one. Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's gonna do it for DualShock and Sense 112. Macho was actually episode 112, not 113.
Okay, I'll fix it.
Uh, no, I got it. I fixed it. Um, Gene, thank you for joining the podcast. Thanks for talking to us. I really wanted to get your perspective on like everything that was happening with Bungie layoffs and Connie leaving and just like PlayStation as a whole. So appreciate you joining. Please plug your ats, your socials, and all that good stuff, man.
Yeah, I think when it comes to these layoffs and stuff, like there's always going to be great games to play. So I think we're going to be okay. And I love that while I feel like we're picking on Sony and Bungie here, I love that there's a lot of pressure being put on the industry to like figure this stuff out and to not have an industry that runs like this anymore. And I think they eventually will, because they're not going to continue to live under this kind of scrutiny on social media. It's just not going to work for them. They look really bad. Everyone looks really bad. But you can find me at 37gene37 on Twitter/X.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, they also have added incentive to get their act together unless they want to strike. So they need to figure this stuff out.
Either a strike or unionization,
Right,
whichever they
right.
want.
Which I think that's what I meant, or I don't know.
You're right. It's either strike and things happen for a change, like what's happened in the film and TV industry, or
Right,
um, yeah.
right. Which that too, they should absolutely unionize. Um, Macho, thank you for joining the podcast. Like you're a guest.
Well,
But
thank you for inviting me.
yeah, of course. And please tell people what you got going on this week.
Yeah, man. So up on the Boricua Macho channel, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok. It's gonna be content, man. We got Resident Evil 4 clips and highlights. I'm gonna be playing Yakuza 0 on Monday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Definitely follow the channel. Subscribe to the YouTube one. Hit the like buttons. Hit the follow notification. All that stuff. We're trying to hit 30 followers for November. We're at 22 right now, so we're going strong, and it's been the third week of streaming. Been very happy and appreciative, and feeling really good about the positive support when it comes to the channels and streaming. So I much appreciate everybody joining in. So definitely tune in on Monday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Yakuza 0, and then Thursday we'll be back to Resident Evil 4. I'm on chapter 10, and there's 16 chapters, so we're close to the end of this game, and then we're playing the Ada DLC afterwards. So it's gonna be a ton of fun. Gonna be a lot of Yakuza and Resident Evil 4, and then in the meantime, finishing off Liza P, and maybe dabbling more into Baldur's Gate 3 now that we have that big update that came just the other day. So that's me. That's Boricua Macho. Make sure to follow.
Nice, nice. Yeah, as for me, I'm gonna be playing Alan Wake 2 as soon as we get off here. And
Are you
yeah.
crazy, sir? It's gonna be 11 o'clock at night. You're gonna be having nightmares.
Hey man, I'm gonna turn off the lights. I'm gonna play, man. Also,
I'm with you.
the DualSense integration is pretty cool in this game too. Very, very Returnal like in terms of like the range drops in the controller. Feels
Oh,
very
you
good.
kidding me, dude? That's a big
Yeah,
sell for me. That's why I kept playing with Control.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Damn. Okay.
Um, but yeah, definitely more of that as well as Baldur's Gate 3. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me for this next week. But yeah, want to thank everyone for joining the podcast, whether live or after the fact. I think at one point we had like 7 or 8 viewers at once, so definitely appreciate those who came by. And yeah, until next time, peace out.